conditions similar. Temperature pretty hot, not ideal. Later on, the times should tumble quite a lot from this point as well. Verstappen, every time he gets in the car, he's just looking good. There's not a lot of corrections going on at the wheel. He's placing the Red Bull where he wants it to. Haven't seen him have a lock-up yet. He's dialed in.
Not a lot of running, quite a lot of performance for Max Verstappen. Car number 1 is P1. Let's head downstairs to Will Buxton once again.
Thanks, Jexy. Yeah, just down here outside Williams, Logan Sargent getting ready to go out. And Logan Sargent, really one of the performers of the morning, P2 in that first session today. Still getting to grips, of course, not just with the team and the car, but Formula One itself. That said, the vibe down here at Williams is, and I don't want to jinx things, but very, very positive. There are these little sort of words coming out of this garage, little feelings coming out of this garage, that it may be one of the best test sessions they've had in a decade or more. Of course, we know over recent years Williams have not had a lot of luck in pre-season testing, stemming back to when they haven't had a car ready, or if they have had the car ready, it hasn't not just performed, but really held itself together. This week, though, these 3 days, certainly 1.5 days in, no major issues. The car performing well, the baseline looks good, the drivers are happy. Both the experienced Alex Albon and this man, new boy Logan Sargent, as we said, second fastest this morning, back out on track now.
So out he goes. Lawrence, you've been hearing similar things from the Williams team. They seem in a happy place.
Yeah, kind of over the winter and kind of heading into the new season, even with those changes at the top with Jos Capito leaving and FX de Maison leaving his role as technical director, there was a general confidence about the job that had been done up until that point. Of course, a lot of the work will have been done for this year's car already before those changes were made at the top. But they were generally very happy with how things were going. And I think when we talk about Williams making a step forward, we're not talking about them stepping forward to the front of the midfield. We're talking about them being part of the pack and being in the fight. And I think as soon as you get in the fight, especially if you're Alex Albon, who's really settled into that team and delivered a string of performances where he's really got the most out of the car, I think that really then pulls him into a window where he could maybe be a bit more of a consistent contender for your Q3s and the smaller points over the course of the year. And I think that was partly why Alex, at the shakedown at Silverstone, was so happy with that, even that initial run, because he felt already that the balance was better, and that's even on demonstration tyres. And so far, his running in the cars, he's been really happy with it too.
The Williams, the qualifying pace has been good, hasn't it, for the last few years? If you think of Russell's heroic, sometimes getting into Q2, even a Q3 in the Williams, same for Albon. The qualifying pace, on average, is with the midfield, really, even if it's towards the lower end of the midfield, is there consistently. I mean, Albon, I can't imagine qualified on the back row all season.
I think this is a really important point, because actually if you look at the way Williams has evolved over recent seasons, there was the Mr. Saturday era of George Russell, where for Williams just scoring a point was a big deal. Now Williams in the points the second half of last year isn't a completely unusual scenario. But actually I was a bit disappointed by Williams last year. They had the largest wind tunnel and CFD allowance of all teams, even bigger than Haas. And we saw what the big allowance meant for Haas. They jumped forwards, they got through and started fighting towards the front of the field, particularly at this race last year. I expected Williams to do the same, and that didn't really happen. And that was down to a number of factors, but one of the biggest factors was they didn't do any tyre testing in 2021. So their first running on the big tyres was here in pre-season testing, and that really put them on a back foot in the car development. They didn't really understand what they were doing around these new tyres. Having had all of that big wind tunnel allowance all the way through another 12-month period, and a bit more understanding of the rules and the cars, and this isn't about the technical leads changing position, by the way, it's nothing to do with that. This is about the engineers who you don't see, who are probably sitting in a wind tunnel right now or poring over a CFD suite in a darkened room somewhere in Oxfordshire. Those engineers have had a much bigger allowance, so they should be able to bring some really nice bits to that car. And they should come into the opening races of the year with a little bit of an advantage over teams that are normally further forward. So we should expect to see Williams jump forward at the start. I wonder if we will. I hope we do.
The race pace will be an important thing for Sargent to be trying out later, and the whole Williams team to move up.
Safe travels there, right?
When Albon scored points, he'd qualify well and then just hold everyone behind him. In Spa, for example, the Albon train, and the car was slippery in a straight line. It got them points, but not with race pace. with qualifying pace to get them up. Qualifying pace is crucial, but race pace would be probably a big area of improvement. Long run here for Charles Leclerc. He's not using DRS down the main straight, so I think he's probably heading into to a longer run. And we just went on board with Nick de Vries in the AlphaTauri, and to me that car still looks like it's understeering a huge amount. Compared to a lot of the other midfield hopefuls, he's waiting so long to get on the throttle, is Nick. And it was one of the most obvious things going trackside yesterday, was just the AlphaTauri compared to every car was just lazy on the front end, and picking him up there on the onboard, you can just see where other cars are rotating in the mid corner. They've got the front downforce to get turned in, and then they can get on throttle earlier. Sometimes it can actually help your exit in terms of less a better balance. If you have more understeer coming in, you end up having worse traction coming out because you've got so much steering lock on, and the AlphaTauri just looks a little bit lazy on the turn in.
Yeah, that team, they use the same wind tunnel as Red Bull. It's got the same engine as Red Bull, the same power unit as Red Bull. It's got a Red Bull gearbox, it's got Red Bull rear suspension, it's got old Red Bull front suspension, I think which dates back to 2019 or 2020. It's that old in the front of the AlphaTauri. It's been modified and adapted by the Italian team, but it is still the old Red Bull parts in the front of the car. There are some clever bits on that car. I was looking down in the pit lane earlier, and I might go and have a little bit later on. There are some clever bits on the AlphaTauri, but yeah, as Jolien says, the car doesn't look to be working quite as intended at the moment, and I just wonder, have they taken slightly the wrong direction? Or is it one of those cases where the engineers have come up with some ideas? Mercedes were a good example of this last year, and just couldn't make those ideas all gel together to make a race car go around a track the way a driver can drive it, and it's nice and drivable. Yeah,
it just doesn't look very well balanced at the moment. Just heaps of understeer. Now you can cure that with you can crank on front wing and sort understeer, so long as then you don't upset the rest of the car and start making it unpredictable or oversteery, and that's where you start to work out if it's a balance issue or an inherent car issue for them.
Okay, once again we can head down to the pit lane where Will Buxton has made his way to Red Bull.
We know why you guys tune in for testing, and that's to try and get a look at all the clever bits of the car. Bob has the camera on his shoulder at the moment, because if he puts it on the floor with the front of the car exposed, they're going to man block it. So we've just kept it up there. Hold on. Got caught behind that. Get down lower, Bob. Get down as low as you can, mate, to have a look at what everybody wants to see on this Red Bull, which is the all-new entry points for those tunnels, Venturi tunnels underneath the car. That, of course, where the air is first channeled into those all-important tunnels underneath that Red Bull. We haven't had such a good view of this, actually, all the way through testing, because the nose and front wing is pretty much always on the car. But I'm sure Sam will love getting this unobstructed view to the front of that Red Bull. And before everybody actually the boys I think are starting to come. Are they going to start working on it before they block us? The Red Bull is an absolute piece of art from front to back. We'll try and get a shot of it actually when the car's actually out here in pit lane, because from the rear it's an absolute thing of beauty. All of the work that's been done on those winglets, the beam wings towards the back of the car, but it's at the front there. We know the front wing has to be critical in terms of cutting through the air, but with all of that importance placed on the tunnels of the 2023 F1 cars, that is the point, the most important point of these cars, where they break the air, where it's channeled underneath the floor and through those tunnels. Sam Collins, I know that is a desperately important part of the car, and great for us to have a view of that unobstructed.
Well, Will, I want to stay with you for a moment, because while we do have the rear end of a mechanic's overall, shall we say, or clothing in view at the moment. When you look at the bulk, if you can get the camera to look at the bulkhead, that's perfect. You've moved the mechanic wonderfully. If you look at just above the brake cylinder there and zoom in, you'll see a little pipe running up on the left or the right-hand side of the car, leading to a little connector. Now, that's the driver's drinks bottle connector that's running up there. Now, I was wondering where Red Bull had put the driver's drink bottle. Well, that little pipe and that little connector tells us something, that Red Bull have retained something they've done for a few seasons now, put the driver's drinks bottle in the tip of the nose of the car. It's only a couple of kilos in weight when it's full, but that will help move a couple of kilos a long way forward on the car and keep the car in the weight distribution window. So, Will, I don't know if you can just see that just above the master cylinder there.
Yeah, just on the left-hand side, you can see it moving up.
That's right, and we know that Max Verstappen likes coconut water in his drinks bottle, and an air temperature of 29 degrees centigrade, 3-layer Nomex, and a bunch of different overalls that are different sort of fireproofs underneath. you might be wanting to take a drink as you drive around the circuit, but that is all about weight distribution rather than the drivers having a drink. I've always wondered what happens if the driver biffs the nose, though.
Yeah, you get coconut water all over you. It's interesting, isn't it? Because they used to have the bottles, a number of the drivers still do have it further back in the car. Some of them even behind the seat in the cavity, just in front of the engine. I know, thinking back, thank goodness, we're going back to the 90s. Damon Hill used to fill his with cold tea because it used to get so hot that by the end of the Grand Prix, he could just have a nice cup of tea. Anything else, a fruit juice or an isotonic drink didn't taste so nice when it was hot, but tea did the job.
No way is that a real story about Damon Hill having a cup of tea.
I believe
I've
so.
heard him tell the story.
So.
Cup of tea whilst heading on to his World Championship.
It gets hot. It does get hot. I used to have it in the as Will said, sort of in the cockpit area. And you're in a hot country, and all you want is a cold drink. Especially in early on when you're going round to the grid or you're on the warm-up lap and you want just a little bit of a refresher before the start, and it's immediately boiling hot. But I thought of a cup of tea at that time, or a sip of tea.
Well, I know our
Not for me.
producer on this broadcast is a big fan of tea, but Jolien, are you just gutted you didn't think of this?
No, I'm not. It's through a straw as well. In the
tea
helmet.
through a straw.
Tea through a straw.
Things have
is
not gone to plan.
Yeah.
If you're having tea through a straw.
Because a lot of drinks are about the vessel you're drinking them in, aren't you?
No.
Aren't they? You got to drink tea in the right environment, and trying to win a Grand Prix in a 90s Williams, drinking a cup of tea.
It's very on brand.
How British do you
It
get?
fits really nicely, doesn't it? It fits really nicely.
I also didn't know that Max is coconut water.
It is.
Is that a known? Is that a?
We did it. It was live on F1 TV. It was, I forget at which race we were talking about in free practice, and we saw the mechanics refilling it in the pit lane, and it was coconut water.
I mean, coconut water is great, so that's a great idea.
It's a good hydrator, famously so. Just niche.
Very niche.
Mostly it's
I just want
your
a cup of-
isotonics.
Just want a cup
that
of
go
tea
in there.
now.
What hot isotonic drinks though? I mean, that's warm Lucozade,
Oh.
isn't it?
But what, hot coconut water, rank.
We might have to try this later.
Gubbins, rank. Words of the day are building up again. I think it's probably time for us to have a look at another morph.
Let's do that.
Should we do that right now?
What have we got?
I think it's going to be Red Bull, but I can't really remember because I just want a cup of tea.
It
But it is
indeed.
Red Bull. There we are.
Well, we're starting with the RB18, and actually Red Bull, they launched their car launch used the RB18 as the launch car, but actually as we roll forward into the RB19, well, the livery's pretty much the same. The number one on the side's the same. You can see a slight reshaping of the side pod, but again, that was the early season spec Red Bull and this is the early season spec, the RB19. And actually, the side pods changed quite a lot later in the year. They went a lot lower. But it's pretty much the same concept. It's harder to see here because the liveries and the light are a little bit different. But if you look above the O of Oracle, you can still see that very characteristic shape of the side pod coming down. The side pod ducts follow pretty much the same concept. The engine cover follows almost the same concept, a few more cooling louvres in different places, but that's not the big difference. But what you can't see so much in this is underneath that Oracle logo, there's a huge undercut on the side pod of this car, which wasn't a big feature of the RB18. And also, if you look at the side of the car from head-on or from a slight angle, underneath the ORA of Oracle, it's much more slab-sided, this year's Red Bull, than the very curved form of the RB18. So it's a much nicer iteration, if you like, of a concept. So when Christian Horner was at launch and saying, you know, the RB19 is really an evolution of the RB18, he wasn't lying. The biggest change, though, the most visible change on that car, is actually the airbox. The roll hoop airbox is completely reshaped compared to last season. And Red Bull have had that roll hoop airbox shape going back for years and years and years. They have changed it. AlphaTauri have changed theirs, and that tells me absolutely one thing. Honda has changed the inlet tract to its power unit, and it is a Honda power unit officially again, but it is maintained by Red Bull powertrains, but also Honda Sakura. But it's all in Milton Keynes as well as in Japan. And they've changed that. Honda have said that they have made some changes to the power unit, but none of them bring lots more power. But usually when a power unit supplier says that, it means they've got heaps amount of more power. And I do expect to see that Red Bull being extremely quick through the speed traps.
Sam Collins, thank you very much indeed. It was good to have all of those morphs. Are you heading to the pit lane?
I think I am.
Terrific stuff. Look forward to more from you. Being told he is in my ear. It's a very afternoon session so far, enjoying it. Coconut water, cups of tea, morphs from testing from Shakedown before to Bahrain this year. Oscar Piastri out there, a driver who's had a year out waiting for his opportunity, provided plenty of content for us in the summer break. Got a bit of a spring break this year with the calendar. There's a bit of a gap in between rounds, Lawrence.
I don't think people who work in Formula 1 are going to know what to do with themselves having such a big gap in April.
Very odd.
Really early in the season. But I guess
not complaining, by the way. That was not a complaint.
And I'm sure the drivers aren't going to be complaining. They're already talking about the fun stuff that they can do in that gap in between just to go and get a bit of downtime. But, you know, that moment will be upon us beforehand. And then as soon as we come back and we're racing in Baku and in Miami, basically we're on the train again, aren't we?
Relentless run, and not complaining about that either. Some fantastic venues to go to in Formula 1's longest ever season. 23 races around the world, some iconic tracks, a brand new race in Vegas, which is going to be one of the more spectacular sporting spectacles you've ever seen. A lot of work going into delivering that, and it is going to be the stuff of Hollywood movie, potentially with a world championship on the line. That's the dream, that we're that deep into the season. It's still unresolved. And we get the treat of going to Vegas for the first time, not knowing who the world champion is. But that's wishful thinking.
It's got a great slot in the calendar, isn't it?
Yes.
Providing we do have a championship that does go to the wire. It's coming up to, what, just over a year now since I was in Vegas, just to kind of kick off that announcement. And
It's a tough life, isn't it, Lawrence?
oh, it was. You know, I had to drive an old school American car around. It was awful. Jakesy, awful. But even then, you know, no Formula 1 infrastructure, nothing. We were just driving around in the car, and it was special. You know, watching the lights fly by as you're driving down the strip. We've got 2 kilometre straight on that racetrack, and it's going to be a phenomenal experience once all the F1 infrastructure's up, the new pit and paddock complex is up, people being able to watch from literally everywhere, from balconies, from restaurants, from terraces. It's going to be one hell of an event.
Can't wait. It's going to be special. And it's one of 3 races in the USA, as you're looking at the first full-timer in Formula 1 since 2006. Logan Sargent. First time since the 80s we're going to have 3 races in the USA.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if it does go down to the wire and we have the Vegas. If Vegas is anything like Jeddah as an opening race, as the penultimate round,
That was.
it would be a cracking script, wouldn't it?
Jeddah 2021, one of the wildest races I think I've ever covered. That was borderline unbelievable.
It was borderline farcical, wasn't it?
Getting
race?
tired even thinking about that one.
Do you want a little bit of long run insight here? Logan Sargent is on a long run on a C3 tyre in the Williams as he turns into to turn 1 for another lap. Nick de Vries is the only other car out on circuit, also on a long run on a C2 tyre, I believe, in the AlphaTauri. And Sargent's really slow at this time. Now, this is maybe in part to the fact that this is his first ever long run in Formula 1, so he doesn't quite know how to push, doesn't know how this tyre, which is a slightly different construction, but fundamentally very similar to last year's tyre. Maybe this is in part down to driver, but there's a huge difference between the pace. I mean, like two plus seconds between de Vries and Sargent. Now, there could well be fuel and engine modes, of course, the usual testing caveats between them. But compared to Zhou earlier on, Sargent is about a second a lap slower. And Piastri was out on the same tyre, similar time as de Vries, the McLaren to the AlphaTauri, and Piastri was quicker than the AlphaTauri as well by a little bit more than half a second to a second. So he's pitted now, Oscar Piastri, having done 13 laps consecutive on a C2 tyre, and he was the quickest of those that I've seen on a long run of the midfielders so far. But the Williams right now, Sargent quick as a headline time on the C5, 3rd quickest still overall, 84 laps is looking good, but the pace on this long run so far is adrift of everyone else. Maybe he's just carrying even more fuel and they've turned the wick down, and now he's coming into the pits at the end of this C3 run. Maybe killed the tyres early on. Didn't look too out of shape though, did it?
Didn't look out of shape. Terrific to get your insight on that, Jolien. I do sometimes feel for the rookies in the era that we cover every minute of testing. that in the past this was behind closed doors. If it is a slightly poor performance, if he is getting up to speed, which you would expect him to do so when he's on those long runs, you'd be able to do it without our gaze and analysis and the graphics and the production and all of that. But there is nowhere to hide from minute one in Formula One these days.
I 100% agree. I'm so pleased there wasn't this when I was getting ready for my debut. It's just such an intense environment. Logan staying in and getting ready for another run here. Just a front wing change. Pulls first and off he goes. I think they didn't change the tyres there, did they? Just a tweak of the front wing. So maybe it was a horrible balance for him, and they thought, let's do, or a new spec front wing that they wanted to do a back-to-back on some high fuel. But yeah, it's a different kettle of fish as well, doing a long run on Formula 2 run Pirelli tyres, but they're so different to Formula 1's Pirelli tyres. No tyre blankets, completely different construction, and different characteristics. So you can lean on the Formula 1 tyres a lot more than you think you can, I think, when you come from F2, where they're sometimes very fragile, particularly when F2's racing here in the daylight and higher temperatures than we've got now. You're so just in your head used to the rear tyre falling off a cliff, which it degrades here, but not quite as much.
I'm delighted to welcome into commentary, if not the commentary box, Alex Albon. We've been talking a lot about Williams, and I believe that Alex Albon, I've just been told that Alex Albon is somewhere in the vicinity of this circuit wearing a headset. So Alex, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Slightly nervy moment thrown to you there. If you'd said nothing, you could have stitched us all up. First of all, how are you?
I was tempted. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying the sun. I'm watching currently in my Williams hospitality unit, watching the TV. So the glory, the beauty of winter testing.
The joy of it. First of all, then, tell us your impressions of the car that you have underneath you, the car that we're currently riding on board with your teammate for this year.
Yeah, it's well. Firstly, I have to say, you guys were going in on poor Logan there.
Alex, it wasn't. It was just an observation of the lap times. And I didn't know you were listening, to be honest.
I reckon we must be a bit higher up on high field than most people. Let's just see, because I think.
Can you get us the answer, Alex? Given that they would tell you.
Just watch him just do about 60 laps in a row today, right now. So I think we've tanked it up high. Okay. That's not to say the others haven't, but I hope they haven't. But yeah, I think we're not in a bad place. The car feels like we're addressing some of the weaknesses last year. To be honest with you, I do still feel like cars carry a DNA. I'm sure, Jolene, you know about that, but it is hard just to get rid of certain issues over a year. It does take a bit more work into it, and it feels like our extremes are less this year. So our low speed to our high speed balance has always been a big talking point for us, trying to get everything a little bit more together. And I think the extremes have reduced. So we're fighting with less understeer, less oversteer, but we're still fighting with it.
Could you feel it straight away when you got in the car yesterday? Were you thinking we're in a much better place within a first run or two with that characteristic, or is it something that you're just dialing out through your time in the car?
Yeah, well, my first push lap of the test, we were only a few tenths off, or maybe a bit more than that, but we weren't far away from my qualifying lap. So we clearly had pace straight away, and of course, we're not running the fuel loads or the engine mileage engine modes that we were running in qualifying last year. So it's positive, but it's all relative. At the end of the day, we think we've done a good job. We've done a better job than we have last year, that's for sure, and we have made progress. But it's all relative to our rivals if they've made a bigger step or not compared to us.
And we were talking, I don't know how long you've been tuning in for, listening to us talking all things Williams. But
it was relentless. I mean, I was here for at least 3 minutes, and that was all I got. So
did you hear us eulogising about your qualifying performances last year?
I didn't hear that one. Well,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I tuned in a bit late for that one.
So what we were saying is,
Just tell me again. Tell me again.
you're such an amazing qualifier, Alex.
He said you were never on
amazing.
the back row last year, and I didn't have the heart to correct him that wasn't the case, Alex.
Was my stat incorrect?
To be honest, there was most probably a couple of times.
There's
I
only a
reckon
couple
Miami
of
was
times.
one.
I scanned through the season. I think it was a variety
And
of
Singapore?
penalties. Alex, can you see a monitor at the
yeah.
moment?
Well, I can. If you're talking about the main screen, yes, I can see Max driving right now.
Would you like to talk us around a lap of Bahrain International?
Oh, sure, I would do. So turn one, there's been a massive tailwind all test. It's been a nightmare and a lot of front locking over there. Turn two, turn three, it's all pretty good. You're basically trying to run the car as cold on the tyres as you can to try to make it last a lap. So turn 2 and 3 can sometimes feel a bit edgy. Turn 4, the wind actually goes in your favour here. So now you have a headwind all the way through this from 4, 5, 6, 7. The car feels amazing, and you tell the guys this is what I want all the time, but it's obviously not possible. Turn 8 is when the tyres are screaming. It's a hairpin corner, and you've just come from a high-speed section, so it is not fun. But even less fun is turn 9 and 10, which is where we're in now. A massive tailwind, of course, just like turn 1, and that's where you're seeing everyone locking up. And it's actually a weakness of our car, which we're trying to address. And I think we're making progress, but we're still locking up. I think I've seen a few replays of myself and Logan going off there. Turn 11, quite a simple corner actually. And then turn 12, which requires a lot of management in high fuel, but it's easy flat in low fuel. And by this point, your tyres are, even if they're overheated by turn 8, they're still overheating more. So these last two corners, especially this last corner, I think we've seen a lot of drivers run wide, is because the tailwind's hitting you from the back here, the tyres are hot, and you're just keen to get to the finish line. So I think heavy foot plus everything else was a good lap from X.
It was a strong lap, wasn't it? He's dialed in at the
Yeah.
moment, going through their program. Whilst we're at turn 1, we were talking last year all about porpoising, which seems like it's much less of a characteristic for everyone across the board. But the bumps into turn 1, do you feel like they've got worse this
Yeah.
year? Are the cars stiffer?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I think so. I think the track hasn't been resurfaced for a while, and that bump is it's got very large. The other parts of the track aren't too bad, but there's definitely more plank wear because of this turn 1 bump than we expected. So yeah, the porpoising's better, but I think the track's worse. So yeah.
Just hearing that Max Verstappen is pitting because he's reporting something loose down in the cockpit, so he's going to come back in and
Was
get
that a Seb quote?
That's not a Seb quote. I knew you were going to do that too. Other question: Are you trying to avoid the curse of last year when you joined us in the commentary box and the car immediately caught fire?
That is true, and I think I told you last time that was a tyre warming method. And so I might just stay here, exactly what you said. And also, it's a bit hot today, and I didn't fancy seeing you guys, so I thought to myself, you know what, they're going to come to me today.
I like it. I mean, you're well established now, team leader now, and suddenly the diva demands start coming in.
That's it. You know, these guys, especially marketing at Williams, they think I'm the biggest diva. And I just tell them, wouldn't you be the same?
What an answer.
Is this over all the
yeah.
media and the appearances that you have to do across a weekend?
Exactly. And it's the, it's all the event stuff and whatnot. But I kid. I don't mind it, but I prefer being behind a laptop, looking at the lap times and getting the tenths out of the car, not looking at memes.
On the subject, so but on the qualifying stuff and how amazing you did at qualifying last year, what we were saying was why the biggest struggle seemed to be the race pace, because your qualifying pace was actually right there with the midfielders on many occasions, and then the race pace was what was holding you guys back, and you were drifting away. And if you got points, it was because you were looking in your mirrors and driving a very defensive race generally.
Yeah.
Is there been a focus to improve the race pace this year? Has that been a particular area of prep for you?
I think it goes hand in hand. So, last year, especially with these Pirelli tyres, when you take up the fuel in the car and you put new tyres on, it can hide a lot of balance limitations that you have in your car. And it always felt like sometimes when you would go into qualifying, you would end up just being able to nurse issues that you can't avoid in a race run. When the tires get hot and they get old and the fuel's heavy, the balance limitations of the car just become more pronounced. And I think that's why sometimes in qualifying we were just, I'm not going to say we were outperforming the car, but we were just in a better position that we could hide some of the issues, which at a race you're just exposed. So with a better through corner balance, I think the race pace will just pick up naturally. That's our belief anyway. And yeah, of course as well, when you are slightly quick on the straights and slower in the corners, you tend to slide around more. The tires overheat more, and that's fine for one lap, but when you've got 70 laps, it starts to accumulate, and that's what kind of made it tricky for us.
Alex, it's Will Buxton up in commentary. Hello.
Hello.
Williams haven't exactly had an easy time of it in pre-season testing for quite a number of years now, and without wishing to sort of jinx things, the last day and a half.
I just had an earful from you guys about coming to Brakes on Fire, but yes.
It seems to be going really well. The vibe down in the garage seems really good. Everyone seems very, very positive. How is it going, and is it as positive as it feels from the outside?
It's been very smooth. So we've had no any setbacks so far. That's including the 2 filming days we've done today, yesterday. We've ticked absolutely everything off the list that we've wanted to get done, which is a bit of a rarity in our sport. So I feel like we're as best prepared as we can be. Of course, the performance is still a bit of an unknown. We don't know what everyone's doing, but operationally and in terms of preparation going into this year, it's gone down very well. And I think as a group, we're happy with how we've executed the FW45 so far. Very professional. I'm going to call my car the 45. Yeah.
The 45. What were the objectives that you really wanted to iron out, in this test session? Was it about resolving the major issues of last year? Was it just an all-round improvement on the car? Was there one thing that you needed to absolutely nail from last year and then consistently improve that package into this? What's the philosophy behind the 45, as you're going to call it?
Yeah, it's kind of what I touched on about through corner balance. That's a place where we would go to some races. A good example would be Monza, let's say, where our car was obviously good on the straight line. We're actually not too bad at braking and straight line braking. And we could get away with circuits where there weren't too many high-speed corners. And it just made the car a little bit restricted in where we could perform at. There was maybe 3 or 4 races in a year where we could look at points, but it was always going to be difficult. Spa was another example. And that's just because our car, it couldn't be, there were some corners, some bogey corners, let's say, that would really hurt us. And that's what we're trying to address, is if everything can be a bit more connected and we can get through, we're not having a major limitation around a circuit, we should be able to tune the car in a better place. And sometimes last year it felt like we were never actually setting up the car in a perfect way. We were always compromised. We always had to find a good balance between high-speed stability and low-speed understeer, for example. And so you were always just finding an okay setup, but it was what would go around the track the quickest. So if we can, the focus has been this year to try and not let that happen. And if we can have a bigger scope to tune the car in all types of corners, then we'll be in a better place and not lose out so much in specific corners. So that's the plan. That's what we've been planning on.
Well, excellent stuff. Alex, I know that the commentary box was too far for you, but appreciate you.
That looks a better vibe, doesn't it?
It
This
looks more
rubbish.
comfortable down there in the paddock. Although
Oh,
if we
do you see
zoom
me?
out with the shot that we've got of you, you appear to be entirely on your own. What's happened?
I'm Billy No Mates over here.
There's
and
no,
by the way,
there's no one
you're
for
not,
miles,
you're
Alex.
not, yeah, exactly. It's because I've upset marketing. They've left me. But you're not too far away. It's just that I didn't want to come see you.
That's all right.
You're actually not
Didn't
that
want
far
to jinx
away.
it.
We've taken it personally. After last year, we do not blame you at all. Alex, thanks for your time. Go well this year.
What's the
thank you very
run
much,
plan?
guys.
What's the run
Oh,
plan? Are
hold
we
on.
going to see a Williams at full tilt, low fuel, soft tyres later tomorrow?
Tonight.
I think it will look similar to what Logan did today. So there's that.
Decisive.
He's walking out of shot.
Yeah.
He's properly had
Drop the
enough.
mic, walk
Yeah.
away.
So yeah, that'll be it.
Top man,
I feel
thank you
awkward
very
now. I
much.
don't know if you're still looking at me.
No, it's all right. We've cut away. We've cut away. Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Go well.
Thank you very much, guys.
Alex Albon, as ever, a terrific sport, and I don't blame him after last year. If you weren't with us last year, he came up to the commentary box, he started talking through a lap, and then Nicholas Latifi properly caught fire and put Williams on the back foot. But great to get an insight to the changes on the 45. I like that.
On the 45.
On the 45. Very good. Also, thank you to Will Buxton, who heard my request for tea. And unbelievably, was this you making?
Yeah, I made you a cup
Oh.
of tea. That's why I was 5 minutes late to the
No,
commentary box.
I really appreciate that. I then went and promptly spilt it all down me. So terrific work all round.
As Lawrence high-fived you as he
Yeah.
was leaving,
No,
and
it
tea
was-
went everywhere.
The intent was nice from Lawrence. Unfortunately, the reaction was tea everywhere. Never mind.
He went to high-five you. You were lifting up your cup of tea to take a sip. There was a high-five to tea scenario.
Yeah, it was a
And
mess.
tea went everywhere.
It was a mess.
I didn't get a hot coconut water. What a
I'm sorry about that, mate. I couldn't
shame.
find any.
What a shame.
It was a hot Pocari sweat. That was about the best I could do.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Would you have had a tea if it was on offer?
We've got Ribena in the canteen, so a hot Ribena.
People have a hot Ribena.
I know, that's why I suggested it.
Yeah,
So I didn't
yeah.
just imagine it.
Look, any level of hot drink up here would have been nice. But
Oh, sorry.
but we move on. I'm glad that Jake's thirst is quenched.
Do you want me to go and get you a coffee or something?
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, mate.
Never ask a question in commentary. Never ask a question. No, it's good to get Alex's thoughts. Different role for him, stepping up to be team leader. He is such a terrifically nice guy.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, when the visor clicks shut, we've heard it sometimes on the radio. I think back to Interlagos and his Red Bull days, and he was telling the engineer, "Just shut up. I've got to get on with this now. I got a chance to make the podium." He's always been forthright in the racing mode. So don't mistake his thoroughly nice demeanour out of the car for any sort of weakness. I think that's old school thinking, and I don't think it's true.
Diva out of the car these days.
It's yeah, it's an interesting one. He is, I think, mistaken as this happy-go-lucky, very affable guy who likes to have a bit of a giggle and is very nice and is everyone's mate. And does that make him a pushover, for want of a better phrase? And the answer is no, absolutely not. I think we saw the grit and the determination that he had last year when he came back from not just the operation he had to have, but then obviously the aftermath of that, and coming back as quickly as he did to a race as difficult as the Singapore Grand Prix, showed tremendous grit and drive. And I was lucky enough to go and do some bits for Williams for their launch, and as part of that there was a little package they wanted to put together with Alex, where it was just him kind of talking to the camera. And so I just fired questions at him, things like, are you a pushover? Are you weak?
That's what you get when you book Will Buxton.
No, but those it was
You get someone to launch your car.
it was to
and
elicit
difficult
it was to elicit response.
Yeah.
Are
you were pushed over?
to ask him about those but to ask him about the difficult times.
Yeah.
Getting dropped by Red Bull. Not once but twice, when he was a kid and he got dropped by the program in karts, and then coming through being dropped again. And what do you do when you face the prospect that everything you've wanted your entire life is gone? And he was brilliant, and it was a very different side to him, where he just he came out with the real side of him.
Yeah.
That when that helmet goes on and the visor comes down, the guy you see outside of the car, and it's something that, you know, Daniel Ricciardo started to talk about towards the end of his time in F1. The guy underneath that visor was not the bouncy, happy-go-lucky puppy dog that you see in the paddock. There is a steely, elite sportsman that exists there, and that shouldn't be mistaken for somebody who is so nice and likable outside of the car.
Leclerc, C3s, lower fuel run for him there. That was a more performance run compared to what he's done earlier on. 12 laps on the board, but the first run was a little more steady. And he's a second away from Max Verstappen. Now goes into a slow lap and will maybe go for another go or come in for a setup change there. But he was pushing on there, Charles Leclerc. We haven't spoken about James Vowles much, have we? I was really impressed. He was speaking at his first team principals press conference at lunchtime, and he came over very measured, very assured. He seemed to do a great job.
I like the answer from him. I've been preparing for this for a while. That it's been in his head clearly for a while that there's going to be opportunities, obviously, to move to other teams and maybe a vacancy aligned nicely. But I like the honesty of the ambition there.
Well, to study at the school of Toto for
Yes.
as long as he has, there's probably no better education to have. Great, and what was lovely with his appointment was, while it came as a massive surprise, I don't think there was a single person certainly that I've spoken to or that I heard from or any articles that I read, that didn't think it was an absolutely perfect appointment and thoroughly merited. You know, even if it did come as a bit of a surprise, and even from, you know, Toto and the guys at Mercedes who said we've let James go, we didn't want to, but boy, is he ready for this, and is he the right guy for this, and we wish him all the best with it.
He's become much more of a sort of rounded management figure at Mercedes, hasn't he? Really in Toto's ear the whole time about all manner of things, rather than strategy, which is his area of expertise. So yeah, it seems a good appointment. If Williams need team orders, he's the man to make a call.
Well, and here's the interesting thing as well. A lot of you may have seen Jerome D'Ambrosio hanging out around here this weekend. I saw him over at the Mercedes hospitality this morning. Jerome, of course, who was with Venturi in Formula E as their team principal, working with Susie Wolff for a bit of time down there. Chat is Jerome might find himself at the top table at Mercedes F1 in a possible sort of partial fill of one of the roles that James left behind, which was a lot of the work that he did with young drivers. And yeah, Jerome, of course, former F1 driver himself, and someone who could fill a position there very, very neatly. I think would be a great appointment if indeed that does transpire. But yeah, Jerome here with seemingly with Mercedes this week.
Yeah, one thing to be here for a race, another thing to be here for the test. So,
former co-commentator, of course.
Yes, one of your many co-commentators.
Yeah.
From the GP2 days.
Yeah. Nick De Vries, of course, post-race show host. Famously, we had to find another one in Monza. Felipe Drugovich stood in.
Very good.
I mean, it's the seat to have.
Gets you straight up.
We told Daniel Ricciardo last year, come on the post-race show as co-host next year, guaranteed seat for 24.
Yeah, but what was his answer?
Nah, you're all right.
Yeah, there you go.
You don't want that 2024 seat then, do you?
It's not a magic bullet back
No,
to a race seat.
It's not.
I mean,
it's really not.
I've been waiting for my call back, and it's just not come in. I'm grinding it out here. I'm doing the hard yards. But
I'm still here, and the phone
keep
isn't
popping
ringing.
up and coming by.
Someone think of the past.
Nico Hulkenberg's staunch refusal to have anything to do with it seems to have paid out well for him.
You had some fun with him at lunch, didn't you?
Yeah, it was good to see him. Yeah, it was nice to have a bit of a catch-up.
So where are we at this stage of play? 12 laps for Max Verstappen and a rapid lap time of a 1:31.650. Then Sainz is 70 laps from earlier on, put a 1:32.4 on the board. Over the bumps on board with Oscar Piastri to turn 1 now.
minor lock-up, end of braking, just as he started to think about turning in, and unloaded the right front. Immediately locks up and missed the apex. Just a little bit late on the brakes for Piastri. McLaren flying very much under the radar.
Yep.
Zach Brown saying that they've not hit their targets. Very strong stuff actually from Zach. We knew that they were, the general demeanour has not been positive at McLaren through the winter, through yesterday's running. They obviously missed a bit of track time with a brake issue, and Zach was saying fundamentally, we've got upgrades coming, we will get there, but we're not in a great place right now.
Okay, let's go down to the paddock once again, where Laura Winter is ready for another chat with Mario Isola.
Alex, yes, Mario is joining me here in the paddock. Yesterday, Mario, we spoke about the winter and how Pirelli have been preparing for the season. We're now in the midst of it.
Yeah.
We've got cars on track. We're a day and a half or so in. What kind of feedback are you getting from the teams?
Yesterday night, they were complaining about the balance. More about the balance, I believe it's a combination of the new tires, new cars, and a bit of wind that was disturbing the downforce yesterday. Today they are more focused on tires. We have seen end of this morning that some teams started to make race simulation using all the 3 compounds that are selected for the race. I'm expecting that when the temperature is going down later this afternoon, they will try performance runs to understand the pure performance, and tomorrow probably they continue to focus on tires in order to better balance the car. Still the rear is a bit weak, probably because the front is stronger, but the performance is quite good. Looking at the lap times, the performance is quite good.
Was there any positive feedback? You went straight in there with a complaint from the teams. Did they have positive things to say as well?
I believe it's a bit early to complain or to give positive feedback, because as I said, they have to understand how to better connect the car front to rear. And that's their challenge for the moment, to be ready for the race. Then obviously next 2 races will be completely different, as we said yesterday. But for this race, what is the target for them is to try to reduce the rear degradation. We know that Bahrain is all about rear degradation. You have a very abrasive asphalt, high temperature, so degradation is high by definition. And if they find a way to reduce degradation, is a key element for the race.
As you say, we're expecting some performance to start to come out of these cars. We're expecting the drivers to begin to lean on them, and we're hoping those lap times will start to tumble. What have you made of some of the times we've seen so far, and indeed the reliability as well? Because generally across the board, it's been pretty reliable stuff, and certainly for Red Bull, they're topping those timing sheets, certainly from yesterday.
I didn't see any issue with the reliability. Everything is working as expected. It is also true that we don't have big changes of regulation compared to last year, so it is just an evolution. It is interesting for us to understand the performance of the cars, because obviously we can imagine a high rate of development during the season, and we cannot change the tire during the season. So we need to have an idea on where the performance is going. That's important for us. We have 23 races, and we need to provide a suitable tire for 23 races. But everything is going as per expectation, I would say.
It's going to be a fascinating season, isn't it? Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
Hopefully this time tomorrow we'll chat again and see what we've
I will be here.
Great. See you there. Thank you very much. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much to both of you down there in the paddock as the sun ever lower in the sky. Laps completed for you on the left-hand side. Verstappen with just the 12, but a roasting pace out front. The usual caveat that we don't know engine modes, we don't know fuel loads. It is Verstappen's last time in the car this session, so they are going to be focusing more towards performance. Sainz's 70 laps were set this morning. Logan Sargent, 85 laps on the board. He's got all day. Charles Leclerc's up to 14 in the afternoon session. Top 5 rounded out by Fernando Alonso on 80. The rest, any McLaren 15th and 16th, Will. Jolin called it under the radar a few moments ago, and he's heading out on track, so we'll get his perspective updated compared to yesterday when he's at turn 11. Terrific corner, the fast corner around the circuit, looking at George Russell completing a lap, and that, when he comes over the line, will be the completion of lap 14.
I mean, yes, under the radar, potentially, but from what we were hearing at lunchtime, with some of those targets having been missed and the admission of that from McLaren already, is it under the radar or under serious pressure and under the cosh for McLaren at the start of the season? It's and look, it's only testing. We don't know what fuel loads they're running. We don't know anything about the run plan, but from what we've seen so far, it has been possibly the most disjointed, or should we say difficult start of any of the teams.
Well, they've not been making positive. They were very matter of fact at the launch.
Yes, very true.
They were very matter of fact in the team principal press conference or the CEO press conference, depending on the position that you have in the team. And that's Oscar Piastri locking up into turn 10. Saw a lot of this yesterday. You haven't seen so much today, but there's another one for our collection of slow-mos down. And you get that a lot because you're downhill, you're turning under braking. And he's continuing to log.
And I think another
up there, and now we're on to the after.
Yeah, and another team and another car that isn't exactly setting the timing screens alight, and a car that looks pretty tricky out there on track, even if they are pumping in the laps. Yuki Tsunoda, 85 on the board for him, and now, of course, Nick de Vries out on track as well. So, big morning for Yuki with 85. Nick with 28 to his name already. They are going out there and grinding out the laps. Nothing really to show for it in terms of headline pace, but hopefully for them, they'll be able to turn up the wick tomorrow on the third and final day of testing. We saw that from them last year. It didn't ultimately reflect itself in the best of seasons for them. They had the pace in the start of the year, didn't develop well enough throughout the year. Mistakes from both drivers really throughout the season cost them a lot of potential point scoring opportunities, and 9th in the championship was, I mean,
very unlike them.
Very unlike them, and no return on a car that, for a car and a team that actually could and should have done far better last year. They were just outperformed, outdeveloped.
It's hyper competitive, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And when you look at Aston Martin and the start of the season that they had last year, 9th fastest at best at the start of the season. By season's end, up there competing with the likes of McLaren, Alpine on occasion, consistent top 10 qualifiers. They got the job done over the course of that season, which I guess just shows that testing isn't everything, and it's not necessarily how you start the season, it's how you finish. But yeah, we were just discussing it off air. The two teams that we have the biggest question marks out about at the moment are McLaren and AlphaTauri, because we just don't know if those times are at all representative or if they are holding something back, and we'll see something more on the last day and a half.
Hulkenberg logging another lap in the car. He's up to 16. This is tour 17 of the 3.3-mile circuit. That will open the season. Couple of years away, returns to the seat. Really fought to get himself back into Formula One. Once he knew there was a vacancy, once he knew there was going to be an opportunity, pretty relentless in chasing it down. Has got that, and what Haas want in return is consistency. A man who one season, I can't remember which one it was, but one season he seemed to be glued to 7th place. If he can replicate that for Haas, worth his weight in gold.
Yeah, it would. It really would, and that's that's what the team needs, and they haven't had that since they had Grosjean and K-Mag in the early days. Two drivers who would consistently, if the car and pit stops, etc., worked out for them, bring home the points, and that's what they're hoping for in the experienced hands of Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, rejuvenated by this unexpected return to the top table, that they will deliver the results if the car is capable of bringing them home.
That's a lap that takes him up to 7th place. He
Decent.
said it on the C4 tyre. Check that looks correct. Always do a double check at testing whether the info is correct, but it absolutely is. And German driver round turn 1, ahead of his teammates' time from earlier on, but difference in compound to be noted there.
Pierre Gasly wearing his helmet as a crown.
As you do.
As one does.
Before you get
That's a nice shot. Love that. I've been really impressed with Alfa Romeo in the day and a half we've had so far. Cracking on with the project, consistent times, team impressed and confident. Valtteri, Zhou Guanyu, both of them seemingly really happy with the car. Good noises coming out of the team as well. Pace looks good. Reliability looks good. Looks nice, poised out on track. Yamon Show, I think, has done a wonderful job to deliver once again a really pretty, really tidy car.
So Nick de Vries out there logging laps, as they all are at this stage. We're not quite into the performance window. That comes in the final 2 hours of the day, when we'll maybe get a selection of the softer tyres in the range available to them. But Hulkenberg did go out there on a C4. Give us something to look about as he moved up to 7th position. Nick de Vries, a Formula E champion, a Formula 2 champion, and getting his full season debut, Super Sub appearance last year, and getting his full season debut at the age of 28, which is pretty unusual by Formula 1 standards.
It is these days.
It really is. If you
No
consider
kid.
Matteo Porchetta up here, and he's 19 years of age, he'll be knocking on the door next year if he was to clinch the Formula 2 championship this season.
A decade earlier.
And that's the spread that you get.
Better catch up. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good that he's in on the Formula 1
I'm
grid
catching up.
2023.
I've never known why experience
Matt's about
is a
time to
dirty
start driving.
word, in this little day, in the modern era. You can't buy experience. And sure, you want to sign up promising young talent as early as you can, get it on your books, nurture it, make the most of it, and launch it into a Formula 1 seat if it is ready. The man we're riding on board with here, the ultimate example, a karting prodigy, rushed through the junior formula, thrown in at the deep end, and didn't eat float. Beautiful job, up to the top team, double world champion. Fabulous. But, there you go, potted history, in case you needed it. But it doesn't work for everybody. And the path isn't the same for everybody. And just because Max Verstappen was ready as a teenager doesn't mean that every driver will be. Doesn't mean that those opportunities will present themselves at the right time. Nick de Vries, a two-time champion. Actually, Nick de Vries, the first Dutch FIA world champion before Max Verstappen, because he was FIA Formula E world champion before Max Verstappen. So he was the first Dutch FIA single-season champion. But the cards didn't fall, and perhaps he wasn't quite ready before. There's nothing wrong with being ready at 28, 29, 32, whenever that time is. I've always argued you're ready when you're ready. And it shouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that somebody can come in their 30s and deliver. When a Fernando can deliver into his 40s, when Lewis can deliver through his late 30s. Why should we be ageist and say that a rookie has to be a given age and has to be a teenager?
I want to see the best drivers on the grid.
Bingo, it shouldn't matter what age they are.
Not the drivers who are fashionable, not the drivers who are in a certain window of their career. I want to see the best drivers on the grid. Verstappen had a purple first sector, by the way, on the C3 compound of the tyre.
And that's why I'd still love to see the super license rules opened up, so that we could get the possibility of crossovers and people who have made careers in, let's say, endurance or IndyCar or wherever. Why shouldn't we see a Joseph Newgarden, a Scott Dixon, or a Will Power? Hello, James Boy, out on track taking photos. Why shouldn't we see them giving it a go? I'd love to see that. I think it would be fantastic. Imagine you get a wild card, American Grand Prix, or chuck Joseph Newgarden in for the 3 US races, or I'd love that. But is what it is.
Slightly scruffy end to the lap for Max Verstappen. And he, after that purple first sector, trailing off. No improvement in the second and the third. We go on board the exit of 4. All 4 wheels off the road. Trying to hang on to it. His benchmark today, a 1:31.6. A replay of that moment. With him going slightly beyond the track limits.
Can't do that next week.
No. And that was a good step forward. The hard and fast rule for the white line last year was a good step forward. Everyone knew where they stood, and that was the case.
Yeah, I think if the runoff isn't going to penalise, then you have to make the rule hard and fast and applicable at every track, at every corner, in exactly the same way.
Fernando Alonso out there again.
It does look good, doesn't it, Aston Martin?
Expectations rising for Aston Martin.
It really
Well, you mentioned a few minutes ago, you were talking about their start to the season last year. And they're at the back of the field, developed really well.
Yeah.
They're making confident noises. They've got a new facility. They're going in the coming months to have the wind tunnel coming online.
Let's just play fantasy F1 for a
Go
minute.
on then.
And imagine just for a millisecond that when Lance Stroll injured himself, the first call had gone into Sebastian Vettel. Seb, we know you've retired, but would you possibly turn up to Bahrain just on the off chance that we need you? And then sure enough, Lance, and we hope he does come back, but if he can't, next weekend we get Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel in a competitive Aston Martin. Oh,
Fantastic.
under the lights. I mean,
Yeah, underline again. Hope Lance is okay and
of course,
recovers.
of course.
Get
But
back in. But we're in
fantasy
fantasy F1. It would be good for a couple of reasons. Number one, very, very funny after all of the deserved hoopla for Sebastian's retirement.
Yes.
He comes back the race after.
Yes.
Would have been good value. And what a super team.
Can you imagine 6 world championships
The
between them?
old rivals.
Yeah, but Fernando Seb lineup at Aston Martin with all the work that Seb
So,
put
yeah.
in last year. The car comes good.
Yep.
Seb and Fernando, let's say they qualify on the third row of the grid, nibbling away at the back. Then there's a retirement up the front. One, maybe 2 cars, double podium for Aston Martin, Fernando and Seb. I mean, anyway.
Laura Winter has just wandered into the combox mid Will Buxton F1 fan fiction.
That was
Sorry.
quite the story, Will. Thank you for having me, boys. This is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
This is called a commentary box.
Thank you. This is, astonishing. No, I've been in one before.
Yeah,
I have been in
years
one before.
ago.
Yeah,
When-
2020 testing, when I was a mere baby in the Formula One world. I think I'm about a toddler now. I still feel like the new girl at school sometimes. But no, the paddock's good. It's bustling. It's happening. And honestly, if I hear or say the words, but it's only testing, one more time.
I
I know.
That's
the rule.
It's only
Part of the
testing.
job. Part
Yeah,
of the job.
it is. It is very much just testing, but it's exciting.
Even though it's only testing. From everybody that you've spoken to over the last 2 days, you can't read too much into the tires, but you can read body language. And having interviewed the drivers for a long time now, you can read who's happy, who's not, despite what words they're saying. Who looks like they've got this?
I can tell you who I think maybe doesn't
Okay.
have it
Yeah,
at the
that's cool.
moment. I did
around.
speak to Lando earlier, and obviously we've heard the comments from Zach Brown saying that we have missed targets.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to Lando, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he'd just woken up. So, well, he said to me, "I've only just woken up, so I'm
That's
a
the-
bit
that's the clue.
sparked out." So he'd been asleep, and therefore he probably needed a bit of waking up to be a bit jollier. But he did seem downbeat, whether that was because the car isn't where they want it to be, or whether it's because he's literally just woken up and perhaps didn't want to face the world's media. I don't know.
Okay. So, yeah, unfortunately, that falls into what we were talking about
does.
about 5-10 minutes ago.
I spoke to Kevin Magnussen as well, and for him, it was very much a case of, we don't know yet, it's just testing. I think they're itching to open things up tomorrow, to lean in, to get it going tomorrow on track. I think they kind of just want to get to day 3 of testing and then ultimately to race day. They
Fire it
can
up.
stop fielding these questions from us about what does this mean? And they are basically saying, we don't know either.
Yeah.
At the moment, nobody knows. It's just testing.
Mercedes back to the pits with George Russell, who had a snap at turn 4 earlier on. I thought he was going to go to the outer loop part of the racetrack. Gathered it all
He did
together,
do
though.
well on that outer loop.
He
didn't
did do
loves it.
exceptionally well. What a debut in Mercedes that was. His first full season with the team. Last year, Grand Prix winner off the back of it. And looking to take further steps forward up against the benchmark for so many years in Formula One in Sir Lewis Hamilton across the other side of the garage. So we've done good day, bad day, or good test, bad test at least so far. We're beyond the halfway stage now. And plenty for the team still to do, but plenty of progress that can still be completed. Sargent now up to 87 laps, Will.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. When you think of recent years and you think of Williams' troubles, if they can top 100 laps and be the first, well, obviously Yuki's not going to do that because he's out of the car for the afternoon and will be sat there on 85. Yeah, if Logan tops 100 laps, that will be some job from Williams today, and very happy for them that it all appears to be going well.
Yeah, and a big day for a rookie as
Yes.
well, getting out there
Oh,
and
his
getting
neck's
it
going to
done.
hurt, isn't it?
Yeah, perhaps, exactly right.
Yeah, his neck's properly going to hurt tomorrow, Logan Sargent.
Well, actually, I asked Nick de Vries that earlier. I said, how is the body? I know you'll have done a really thorough pre-season, but he'd mentioned to me last time I was racing, it was Monza.
Yes.
And, you know, then he has this period where he's just waiting to see and wait for the deal to get done. And, of course, now he's in the car. And he said, apart from a few niggles, he was feeling pretty good. And actually, talking about body language, he came bounding out of the AlphaTauri motorhome to speak to the media, far more enthusiastically than Lando Norris did. But he said, I'm living my dream. I'm an F1 driver, and you could see that in his body language. So whether the car is thereabouts, for Nick de Vries, everything is an opportunity right now.
It's like that moment last year with Kevin Magnussen. You know, to get that opportunity you didn't think you were going to get. The joy that just, you know,
Joy
comes out
is
of you in that
exactly the
in
word.
that moment.
Joy is the word.
Nick de Vries, who we hear from AlphaTauri, has been reading them the riot act on a number of things that he didn't like about the operation of the team, already ringing the changes down there at AlphaTauri. Now, Sam Collins is somewhere doing something. Sam, where are you?
I'm at AlphaTauri, Will, which is why I wanted to talk to you. There's an interesting detail which Bobby can film right down here, just on the floor of their AlphaTauri, which needs a bit more attention. You can see how the floor waved around on the edge, and it has that little wire running underneath it. Bob will be able to get a bit of a look when it stops in the garage, just behind the All-In logo. I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but you can see it there. Sure, you can see it just when the mechanic gets out of the way for us, which is nice of him. He's doing his work. But this car has got a lot of really nice aerodynamic details on it, so I'm not quite sure why we're not seeing the performance from it on track. The team do seem quite together, quite organised. It's just not showing us on track the things we really need to see at this point. But the details on this car and the level of detail on it is absolutely beautiful. And again, AlphaTauri bought a car with a lot of technical interest on it, but it isn't really showing what it can do. One thing that you may not have heard much discussion about is the cockpit installation for the two drivers. Yuki Tsunoda and Nick de Vries are very different sized drivers, so the cockpit will have to be designed unusually around Nick de Vries, who he has to be able to fit in for his full body height and weight, whereas Yuki Tsunoda, he's so short, they have to put special adaptations into the car. When Yuki Tsunoda had his debut season, the team had to get special dispensations to the FIA to be able to make changes inside the monocoque to fit Yuki Tsunoda into the car. But this car designed around de Vries and Tsunoda, so it should be their car and it should be working quite nicely. Just a little interesting detail hit down here on the front bulkhead. Really neat bit of design from AlphaTauri by moving the steering rack just straight into the middle of the front wheels, putting it right down by those lower wishbones. So back in the day, the lower wishbones were not in the middle of the front wheels. That's the way Formula One cars are now. And there's that push rod front suspension that AlphaTauri are using those parts from an old Red Bull under that 21 vanity panel, we call it. So that's just one of those interesting details of the AlphaTauri. I really genuinely think, though, there's a lot more to come from this Italian-built car. Back to you, Will.
Thank you so much, Alex Shakes. Laura Winter up here in the commentary box as we look down at the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Surely there's more of a gap in height between Gasly and Ocon, wouldn't you think? 4 inches, I think, Laura, you said is the difference between Yuki and...
That was a guesstimation that,
that
was not meant to go on air, Will.
Oh, sorry.
No, I
thought you knew. That's why you said
You might as well just fade these mics up constantly. Just stay on air.
That was off-air chat. No, I think that Yuki's... Oh, I'm about to... Is he 5'2" or 5'4"? And then...
That would make a huge amount of difference in the maths that you've done.
Yes, maths was never my strong point.
No,
but
that's why he became a broadcaster.
Absolutely.
There's no broadcaster who's strong at maths, and if they are... Well, actually, Palmer's quite good at the old mental maths.
Of course he is.
Of course he is.
He's good at everything, isn't he? I think Nick de Vries is 5'5", 5'6", so depending on the Yuki measurement, 3 to 4 inches.
Right, give me a minute.
But they're the shortest team, aren't they?
Yes.
Yes. 5'2" and 5'4".
Thank you, Producer Joe, for that information.
So it's only 2 inches?
It is 2
It's
inches.
not a huge gap between the two of them.
Not so much.
Not
Not
so
before I
Even less.
whisper to you in secret.
Oh, we're thanking graphics for the information.
We're giving full credit.
Full credit where it's due.
Are we sure the graphics came up with it? Have we got any more? We're going any further? No. Come on. I've been invited to thank all the team. You get that privilege on day 3 when we're wrapping up. And Crofty is looming over the shoulder, ready to complete the final 2 hours of the day. They're coming up in about 35 minutes' time to get us to the checkered flag. Then we'll be back for the first 2 hours tomorrow, the first 2 hours of the afternoon session. And then that is testing complete, and we're into the real thing, and it is flying by.
It is flying by, isn't it?
It's not bad news if you're a Red Bull fan, if you're a Max Verstappen fan, because they look like they're in a really good place. If you're a McLaren fan, maybe a little bit of concern. If you're a fan of the drivers whose heights we were discussing, nothing wrong with being their height at all, by the way. Nick de Vries, Yuki Tsunoda. Thank you for that pat on the shoulder, Will.
How tall are you, Alex? Sorry, just jump in there.
When you're my height, you don't measure, so I'm not entirely sure. But I think Yuki's shorter than me. So,
Just.
yes. I think he's the only driver that's shorter than me. Okay, probably this is well timed, because they want to hear less from us and more from George Russell's Mercedes.
Get you and Yuki together.
Yeah, makes sense to me. And after that well-timed audio uplap,
Mr. Jerome D'Ambrosio on the left-hand side of the screen. Mr. Toto Wolff in the middle.
and now back on the racetrack with McLaren and Oscar Piastri. 2.5 hours to go of this second day. Hulkenberg on the C4 just popped it up to second place. So he did a performance run earlier on. And now, as we get into floodlit territory, not yet at that stage, but there we are, on board now with the driver who's just put it into second position, 0.8 of a second away from Max Verstappen's effort. And so 2 push runs for Nico on the C4 tyre. And he will be adding to that total of 181 race starts as he resumes his Formula One career. A few Super Sub appearances last year, and he resumes it back at Bahrain International. But as the sun looms large in your picture and ever lower in the sky, we're going to see some softer compounds bolted to the cars and enjoy seeing the cars maybe further towards the limit than we've been enjoying so far today.
That's a decent lap from Hulkenberg.
Yeah. It is.
0.8 off. Yeah.
If they're 0.8 off Verstappen and qualified, they'd be delighted.
I mean, wouldn't they?
They would be absolutely exhilarated down there, the American team.
as Piastri winds it up. DRS open to go for a lap. What tyre is he on? Oh, he's on a C2 or 3. C3. Now the wheel brows appear to be holding themselves together today.
Yeah, this was the problem that they had that cost them running in yesterday's afternoon session. Interrupted the running for Lando Norris. Going the opposite direction today. Piastri winding up for a much-hyped F1 debut that could easily have come with 2 other teams, but will be coming with McLaren. And unless something truly remarkable happens, he's not going to continue his run of winning championships in rookie seasons that he had.
If there's a problem with the McLaren, if it's not as fast as the team are expecting, could this actually help McLaren and Piastri's entry to Formula One? I'm thinking largely of George Russell's move to Mercedes last year, and so much was made over the potential for George and Lewis not to get on, for them to wind each other up. If George turns up and is quicker than Lewis, or, you know, whatever, Lewis suddenly feels that he's being threatened, and powder keg explodes. At McLaren, you have a situation where Lando will not want to be beaten or even have Piastri get close to him. If Piastri gets within a sniff of Lando, it will be, you know, a good job from Oscar, because he will be doing better than Daniel did, and as a rookie, that is good. That is a good expectation. And if he starts getting close to Lando or even beating Lando, theoretically, we would imagine, would not be best pleased with that. So Lando's not going to want to have him get anywhere near. There is the potential for that powder keg to get quite warm. Not necessarily explode, but get warm. If the car isn't up there, then they're going to have to work together to hoist it up the field, as Mercedes did last year, which may in some ways actually help that relationship, rather than having 2 young drivers who aren't very different in age, only a couple of years between the 2 of them, might stop them actually, you know, getting into each other.
Yeah. I'd argue. Oh, sorry.
Go on. I'm so sorry.
I don't know
the world has heard way too much.
There isn't any etiquette.
Oh, okay.
Just go.
I'm going to jump right in then. Thank you very much, Alex. I think it'll take pressure off Piastri as well. I heard you boys saying yesterday that you're yet to think of a rookie who's come into a season with more pressure on his shoulders than Oscar Piastri after the furore that happened last summer, after number of teams chasing his signature, after the McLaren versus Alpine case.
Oh, yeah.
The whole debacle has heaps of pressure on his shoulders to do the job at McLaren and to be within a gap of, I almost said Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, to be within a gap to Lando Norris, to be up there, to be beating him even. Yeah. If the McLaren isn't where it's meant to be, for him, he can just relax into the season, allow it to come to him.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off, doesn't it? Yeah, I'd agree with
Perhaps.
that.
We're heading down to turn 8. Trackside is Jolyon Palmer watching the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc disappearing up the hill.
It's happy hour down at turn 8. Trackside again, watching Max Verstappen come through in the Red Bull. And yesterday went to the high speed, turn 11, just over that way. Now the low speed, the tightest corner on the circuit. And I wanted to try and see the cars in a very different section. And there's some subtle differences still. We've seen so far, I saw Nico Hulkenberg, by the way, fly through here on his soft tyres, and the car looked hooked up. Generally, soft tyres will do that, but the Haas, I think, looks okay. And it had quite a sharp turn in the traction. He took advantage of the extra purchase of the rear grip on the soft tyres. Fernando Alonso has come through a few times and been on the limit, locking up. Logan Sargent here in the Williams coming through. Waiting for the throttle, picking it up, and in a high gear actually. There's a difference in gears, 2nd gear for some, 3rd gear for others. And Sargent there on the up, as is Joe in the Alfa Romeo. Seems to be on a very consistent, longer run, turning it in, waiting, squeezing on the throttle. And getting out there nicely, but not particularly aggressively, unlike Fernando Alonso. Here he comes then through, having a little correction, fighting putting the wheel slightly on traction and getting out there again. But Fernando's looking really aggressive at the wheel. The Aston doesn't look quite as composed in the low speed as it did at the high speed, and he is, I think, about the only driver I've seen locking up in this corner. It's a tricky braking zone because you can see come through 5, 6 down the hill in towards turn 7, and now we find Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Let's see what he does. Stamps on the brakes. It looks good. It looks really good, the Red Bull. No corrections, using some grip at the rear tyres there, stamping on the brakes, and a really clean exit. Don't want to get too wide out on the curbs. You'll break traction. Don't want to be exiting with too much steering lock. You'll break traction as well. And Max has the front end to turn it in. No corrections at the rear. Drive on the way out. It still looks good. But yeah, overall, some subtle differences. I saw earlier on, Lewis Hamilton was way out on the entry curve coming through here. So I wondered if anyone was going to go for the Lewis line. I can't quite see that from here, but it looks like some people nibbling the entry curve, but not going too far. Let's see Logan Sargent through once more. On the brakes, neat and tidy, no frills for Logan, and out he goes. A bit less dramatic, to be honest, down at turn 8, but some interesting details. Fernando Alonso locking up, and Red Bull, once again, looking very strong.
Thank you, Jolyon.
He's so animated. You can tell it's only day 2 of the season.
Lots of energy from the Palmer. I think he enjoyed turn 11 more, in all honesty, yesterday than turn 8 today.
Constant speed test on the Red Bull. Lots of flow vis around the left-hand side of the side pod. Logan Sargent notching up the numbers, about to hit lap 98.
And Alex Albon telling us that he's going to do a similar thing to what we're seeing with Sargent. He is running tomorrow, the concluding day of tests. We thank Alex for joining us in commentary.
It was good value, wasn't it?
If not in person. It's all right, we got over it. It's okay. Verstappen stopping on his marks.
Steve Albon.
Yes.
I missed this. Did he not come up?
Nah, couldn't be bothered.
How did he join you then?
Via the magic of technology.
Wow, okay.
We gave him a radio mic and said, you sit there, love. Have a cup of tea.
It is quite far to come, although I'd imagine he'd have got a buggy across, so just saying he could have popped over.
Could have walked like the rest of us.
Good.
He's the peak of human physical excellence. It's literally
He's a
four and
Formula One
a
driver.
4.5 minute walk.
He's doing you a favour, guys. Come on.
Well, to be fair, last year he came up and as soon as he walked in, put the cans on and said, hello guys, it's lovely to be in the commentary box. Nicholas Latifi's car set on fire. And so he just, I think he thought, I'm not going to jinx it
He's
again.
not summoning the bad luck from
No,
somewhere.
exactly. There's your P2 man, Nico Hulkenberg, 132.466, 24 laps on the board for him. His teammate Kevin Magnussen this morning did 67 laps with the best of 133.4, so 1 second the gap between the two of them. Magnussen's time, though, was on the hard. Hulkenberg on the soft. I'm not sure, was it a C0 or a C1 that Kev set his time on?
I should dig it out for you, Will.
Come on, Alex, you should be on the tip of your tongue, mate.
I'll fill Alex, don't worry.
Yeah,
It's
go on, you fill.
interesting, isn't it? I'm getting the hang of this commentary now. It's interesting for Kevin Magnussen, isn't it? Because just looking at his build-up to Bahrain Grand Prix 2022 comparative to this one, obviously he was just thrust into the car, very much thrust into the team, signed up last minute. It was like a Christmas present. He walked around for the first few races starry-eyed. He came out there and got the job done, though, for Haas, didn't he?
Yes.
Certainly doing that here. But now there's pressure and there's expectation on him that wasn't necessarily there before. He's a year in.
Yep.
He's got a year under his belt. He's got a new teammate who, yes, he has history with. He's got a new teammate to establish himself with and bed in with. And he's also got to keep Haas pushing on to where they want to get to. He had nothing to lose last year.
True.
In a sense. But I mean, every Formula One driver, every competitor, every athlete will always heap the pressure upon themselves more.
I think if he'd been sort of roundly beaten by Schumacher, it wouldn't have been good for him.
Not
He had-
ideal, no.
but he did a wonderful job last year. You talk about sort of last-minute call-ups. Hulkenberg, of course, so famous over the last few years for being the sub of choice to jump in. We may yet at Aston Martin have another sub confirmation that tomorrow morning Felipe Drugovich will be back in the car. Fernando Alonso tomorrow afternoon. One would suggest that if the team didn't think Felipe was going to be needed, there would be little to no reason to put him back in the car. So his reappearance in the car, although we don't know whether Lance will be back or not, the fact that he's getting another run in the car might suggest there is a chance that Lance won't make it back for the opening race of the year. He's involved in what we understand to be a bicycle accident where he's damaged one or both of his wrists, as Logan Sargent, you can see on the side of your screen there.
Up to the century.
The century is here.
Time to raise the bat for Logan Sargent.
Take the applause.
And he has good work from him, logging the laps, getting up to speed, and making his way through. Not a lot of information about Lance Stroll. Like,
no,
compared to what we might have in previous years. So there's clearly a consideration. They've tried clearly to give him as long as possible before making a call, but Drugovich reappearing. And going to put my F2 hat on now. It would be phenomenal if Felipe Drugovich was to get at least one Grand Prix start after the season he put together last year. Dominant F2 champion.
I did speak to Mike Crack earlier, actually, and he was saying they are evaluating day by day the Lance Stroll situation. So they're taking it at the moment day by day. Very much team talk, very much the diplomatic line to take, in a sense that we aren't going to tell you exactly what's going on. But again, it's limited information for us coming out. There are rumours swirling and speculation as to how Lance is, and obviously we wish him the very best. But Mike Crack very much saying that they're just taking it day by day.
Sometimes we are told things off the record that we can't share. That's not even the case this time. It is genuinely, there's nothing to tell you. We'll tell you when we know. Okay.
Go on. It's a shame that Mick Schumacher isn't still in the field.
Go on.
If he was, then, and if Felipe makes his debut in Bahrain, we'd have the 22, 21, 20, 2019, 2018, and 2017 F2 champions. In fact, every F2 champion since it became F2.
That is lovely, Will.
But we don't. So we'll have 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22.
So we'll scrap that idea.
We'll scrap that.
Yeah. Arguably, 2020 was a year to forget for the world in terms of not Mick Schumacher F2 times, but in terms of COVID and everything.
Oh boy.
Okay. We're gonna have a pep talk.
In terms of coronavirus, but let's continue.
We're going to have a pep talk up here in the comm box. Whilst we do that, it's time to hear from Lawrence Barretto and Carlos Sainz, who earlier on today did 70 laps at the wheel of his Ferrari.
Carlos, good to see you. We've reached the midpoint of the test. From the outside, it looks like it's been pretty smooth. What's it been like for you?
Smooth, very smooth. To be honest, quite happy with how we've been able to run the quantity of tests that we've been managed to do over these first few days, exploring the limits of the setup, trying to put the car in different places and learning a lot from it, which is a target that I had from last year that I know we couldn't do, and this year, so far, I'm managing to do it.
I know it's impossible to know performance, but a lot can be felt from the feel of the car. And how does it feel? Does it feel like a step forward?
Feels like an evolution of last year. Feels honestly very similar to drive, and hasn't been major changes going on in the car or in the concept. So trying to improve the good pace that we had last year, and obviously now putting our focus in our weaknesses of last year.
You got one more shot in the car tomorrow. Is that when we're going to get to see you get a bit pushy, going to turn the dials up a little bit?
Whenever I jump in the car, I push, but realistically, the last 10th or the last bit of pushing, you don't bring it until quali with the adrenaline and everything. But tomorrow, hopefully, little by little, I will start building the pace.
All right, good job for the rest of the test. Thanks.
Thanks to Lawrence Barretto. Speaking to Carlos Sainz there. Full focus from Carlos ahead of the new season. Strikes me as a driver who wants to get on with the real thing in a week's time. Talking about the fact they've kept their concept. Ferrari kept the concept. So did Mercedes. So did Red Bull. Some others drifting towards the Red Bull style of car as we check in with Pierre Gasly.
2016 GP2 champion.
You are correct.
So it would be 16, 17, 18, 19, not 20, as Laura has reminded us. 21 and 22.
I will say the pep talk that I received, and the reason that Alex and Will have thrown me under the bus is because I brought up Alex's height. I want that on record right now.
I love it. I love it. This is what I said about the faders on the mics. Just fade it up. There's no
off-air, is there?
Off-air anymore. Even though there probably should be on the evidence of today. Gasly's up to 8th place.
We'd also have the 09 GP2 champion, Nico Hulkenberg, and the 06 GP2 champion, Lewis Hamilton.
All the way back.
And the and the 14 champion comms with you, Jolyon Palmer. I can't believe we had to look at the stats for that. He's going to be very upset.
No, we know. We can't.
He's going to be very upset.
We can't keep hyping Palmer.
He's been hyped a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah, fair.
He does get a lot of hype.
That is fair.
Rightly so. Sometimes.
Rightly so.
It's a great advert for Formula 2.
Yes.
Actually, the feeder series. In all seriousness, it does show I mean, I've loved the Formula 2 racing that I've been reporting on over the last couple of years, doing the Parc Fermé interviews at the end of sprint and the feature races, and speaking to the drivers as well, pre and post interviews, and it's a brilliant series. The drivers are fantastic characters.
And F3 as well. You know, watching
absolutely.
that whole progression, and now we get Formula Academy as well. The all-female championship beginning this year, which is going to be, you know, fantastic to see. Yeah,
it's great racing.
It's
great racing.
And it's wonderful to have them all here in the shop window for F1 teams to see. You look at Alpine's junior roster this year, the lineup of drivers they have is huge, monstrously impressive.
And selfishly on our side as well, we get some of these drivers coming in to us in the pre and post race shows. We get to talk to them. We had Oscar Piastri, didn't we, as co-host up until about, I think, France was the final race he was at, and then nobody heard from him again until Abu Dhabi when I saw him.
Well, he didn't know what shirt to wear.
And I said to him, I cannot believe, and I asked him so many questions about the driver market and how much of a part he was playing and so on. Obviously, he was completely tight-lipped and lied through his teeth to me.
Yeah, that's what drivers
as
do.
they will do.
And you're going to miss your Bezzy mate, Mr. De Vries, not doing the shows with us anymore.
I don't even know what to say to them. What do you mean, my Bezzy mate?
You and Nick.
Oh, Nick, even in the interview earlier, honestly, he's always going.
He's
I
brilliant,
have to try and keep up with him.
He's just brilliant.
Yes, I know, he's a brilliant co-host, isn't he? We both enjoy.
He's a wonderful foil.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because but the thing with him is he'll wind you up.
That's what I mean.
And
he
he'll
always
know
winds me up.
He knows exactly how to do it.
Yes.
Keep it just the right side of professional, and just put you off your stride enough.
It's putting you off your stride. You think you know where a show is going, and Nick will say something, and
you're
him
like,
think,
thanks.
what on earth? Where do I go from there, Nick?
He's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but a great one.
He's wonderful. Yeah. The reduced size Haas pit wall.
Did you see the Instagram caption they put up for this?
No, what was this?
I'm not going to. Let's just say I read it, and I actually am ashamed to say I didn't understand it. Sometimes jokes go over my head. Yeah, ashamedly so. I think it was written by a chap within the team, I was told, and it alludes to size and it getting colder. I'm going to leave it at that. Go and look at the Haas Instagram and you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
But it went over my head initially. But yes, it's reduced in size. Yes.
I wonder if the teams will copy.
It's a clever idea.
Always a thing. Everyone's looking at the other solutions.
For most of them, it's pretty easy because their pit gantries are two solid sections bolted together in the middle, so you just have to bring one. But I'm not sure the boys and girls in the garage are going to want engineers who normally sit on the pit wall in the garage with them.
It would be a sea change,
wouldn't it?
Completely different.
Don't think they'd like that.
We'll find out.
I'm speaking to Gunther shortly, actually, so I shall ask him about it.
Ask him if it is 250 grand or if it's more that it's going to save.
I will. I'll make a note of that.
I mean,
now,
obviously,
though.
ask him whatever you want, but you know.
What is on your question list?
Yes. Sorry,
Laura. Out of interest.
Sorry.
Mr. Drive to Survive on Drive to Survive Day.
You know what you're doing. Oh, shut up.
No, I shall. Yeah, we should explore some things with Mr. Steiner. Looking forward to speaking to him for the first time this season. He's always a great character, isn't he? Within the paddock. Yeah, he's brilliant.
It's good sitting on board with Alonso. This car does look pretty hooked up. A little deep in there.
You started that sentence.
Yeah, just as I started it.
Slewing on wider and wider through 11.
Yeah.
Always happens. Always happens. That adjustment he made into 11 as well.
So the rear end comes around and we get a red flag.
It's commentator's curse.
It's been tidy out there.
Everyone has, haven't they?
It's been really, really immaculate. I mean,
Yeah, reliable and clean driving, hasn't it?
reliable, clean, no snaps, no moments. We saw Charles Leclerc head out of the pits. Kevin, and he was on the limit immediately. Same for Lewis Hamilton fighting the car a little bit yesterday. Kevin Magnussen is always animated behind the wheel. There are no easy laps for Kevin Magnussen. But I think wide moment for Lando Norris earlier. I'm trying to think of a moment when we've seen a car off the road.
Jolien will be disappointed.
Ice creams.
Oh.
It's that time of day.
We're in commentary box 31.
Oh, don't do that to us. Come on.
Ice cream cab. Here we go. Do we have another one?
Jakesy's finished his cup of tea. That's just mean.
No, I was saying Jolien will be disappointed, won't he? Yesterday he was hoping for thrills and spills and drama on day 2 of testing. I'm not sure we've had, I wouldn't say it's been quite at that level. The teams will be happy though.
They will. This is why we go testing. They don't want red flags. They don't want cars breaking down. It gives us something to talk about, but ultimately what we want to see is cars on track. That's the most important thing. It's so funny, isn't it? You think back, not so long ago, group testing didn't even exist in Formula One. I remember when I started, and in my earliest years of writing for F1 magazine, and we would all be, each journalist would be sent off to a different track in the winter throughout January and February. I'm looking back at 2002, 2003.
I think this is good to point out though, because we have a lot of new fans in recent years.
So we'd all be sent off to different tracks. Ferrari would be either at Fiorano or Mugello, and they would have 2 or 3 Ferraris just pounding out the laps, lap after lap after lap after lap after lap, for days at a time, literally until the sun set, no floodlights around the track, until they couldn't see anymore, and then stop testing and go to the hotel and eat some pasta and come back the next morning as the sun rose and go testing again. And as a journalist, you would sort of, if you weren't allowed in, you'd sit on the outside and try and time it out. You'd usually have Toyota and maybe Minardi and Jordan would be at Paul Ricard. So you'd have 3 teams there. You'd have one journalist over at Ricardo Tormo in Valencia because Williams would be there with somebody else. You'd have a couple of teams over at Barcelona putting in the labs, each of them with 3 cars, but they wouldn't all be on track at the same time. So you'd have to do, one day there'd be 2 Williams and a Minardi, and the next day there'd be 1 Williams and 2 Minardis and a Jordan, and then the next day, and the climatic conditions would be different, the temperatures would be different, it might rain a little bit in the afternoon. You'd have to keep tally of tyres they were running, and the lap times they were all running, and you would have to then report that in, because there was no timing that was done or anything like that. And,
none of this luxury.
And then every month, or every week in Autosport, or every month in F1 magazine, there would be a table of literally an entire month of running, and at every single circuit, and you would have to try and create some form of picture of who looked good, and you wouldn't know, because
it feels like another world. And it's not even that long ago that it was a totally different approach, and you had separate testing teams.
Yes, you did.
You had personnel getting their starts on testing teams before getting promoted to the race team. That is completely gone.
And as journalists as well, you step up from Formula 3 or Formula 3000. Your first gig of reporting on Formula 1 would be, all right, well, we'll let you out to a test, and you'd go to a test and interview a driver or report back with the times, and if you did all right at testing, they might let you out to the Thursday at Silverstone, and then if you proved yourself there, you might get to go to Monza or something. It was amazing times. It was it's how you cut your teeth.
And now all unified for you, with 7 minutes of our stint remaining, and all in the one place, testing restricted for a cost-saving basis, really, and to make it a more even. But the classic thing is, they just instantly went and spent money on simulators. So until the cost cap came in.
Could you imagine trying to televise it now? 5-way split screen between Mugello, Ricard,
you in Ricard, trying to lure in Mugello. And then you'd find out who the producer liked the least. when they sent whoever they sent to Valencia, because that is not a classic track for 4 wheels.
Ricardo Tormo was great for testing.
Yeah,
great for testing.
Great track for 2 wheels, but not a great track for 4 wheels.
Honestly, for testing, it was brilliant. I remember watching them as Checo was having a little snoop down at Mercedes.
It pushes him away.
Yeah, George's like, come on, let's go and have a look at where they're going down. Oh, let's listen.
Let's listen in.
Just talking about wind.
None of this football nonsense where they're all talking, they've got their hands over their mouths. I mean, I don't know what that's all about. Nothing could possibly be interesting enough on a football pitch at the end of a game to cover your mouth. But they all pick it up immediately. But a quick check-in between Checo and George, who contested the win here in this Sakir Grand Prix back in 2020 as he notched up his first Formula One win.
And he won it.
Superb day of motor racing. A day that Mick Schumacher clinched the F2 title as well. Just a solid gold classic.
Absolutely.
From the start of the day to the end was phenomenal. Shouldn't have brought up Mick Schumacher, should we, Laura?
That's not what I said. I'm actually not having this. I was not talking about sport. I was talking about our world in general. It was a far deeper comment than either of you can comprehend, and I appreciate I went above your head.
With Mick Schumacher, he's been saying that he's been included in the debriefs, he's in every meeting, he's up to speed, he's integral to the team. If ever I'll tell you why I took a pause when we do the throw in a minute, but I had to take an intake of breath.
Get Comcam on immediately.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm sorry, that looks like...
Oh, my word. Crofty's wanted it, by the way. He's not making any sense, but you'll see why.
Any fan.
You'll see why now. And if you think you think the content before was dross, here we go.
Hey, kids. So you got ducked down, Crofty. No one can see you.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, my...
Yeah.
The sunglasses indoors.
I mean...
I like it. I want one.
MC Croft, the place to be.
I mean, we all get given free merch from time to time.
Loving it. He's
I'm not
loving it like this.
Sure.
That is something.
Well, we've got 21 seconds to go, so we'll finish it up and then we can leave. That is.
Wow.
Now, in the old days, Crofty would have been the perfect host for the monkey seat on the F1 post-race show, because we used to have very sparkly jackets like that. I'd love to say it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Where can I get one?
He's not going to find
no one can hear you. I know it's your first time doing this, Crofty, but...
I didn't realise we had a microphone. You have to speak to the right people, Laura.
Okay.
Shall I get my people to talk to your people?
Oh, please.
We'll get you a jacket.
Is it silver and emerald green? Are they the only colours?
No, there are colours for every team. I just thought green and silver was a very Vegas colour. We get one for Jakesy, but this might be a bit big for you.
Well, we've come full circle.
Dipping there. Well,
oh boy.
I wouldn't start throwing punches about size, mate.
No, you should.
That's a revisit from the session we did years ago together.
Oh my God.
And that is why they split us up, folks. So it's not just puerile nonsense.
If you can hear cackling in the background, it's Anthony Davidson.
Oh my word.
This is chaos.
Yeah.
Can I leave now?
Complete
Because
chaos.
if I speak to Steiner, then I feel really awkward.
Yes.
Bye, Laura.
That might be a good idea.
If you speak to Gunther Steiner, ask about his jacket, and his sunglasses. He's got some Elvis glasses.
Oh, I'm going to force him to wear it.
Does he look like Jackie X?
No, he looks like a bad Elvis.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go find him and get him to get that on for the interview.
Oh,
thanks, Crofty. What a vision.
We're out of vision now. And the world breathes a collective sigh of relief.
Okay, I'm throwing somewhere to someone whilst we have a massive argument off air.
Bye, guys.
Let's go downstairs. Thanks for your company. Crofty and out next to take you to the flag. Sam, try and sum that up, my friend.
Well, I think I'm going to speak for many fans in the world that now, where we're going to have a little less conversation and a little more action, and that's nothing to do with Gunther Steiner's sunglasses. I've got a camera in my hand because I've been walking around up and down the pit lane taking photos. Now, a lot of people ask me, what are all the photographers in the pit lane doing? Some of them are just taking photos for magazines and websites, that's normal. There's people like Albert Fabrica there, he's taking pictures on his mobile phone, sticks up on Twitter and all the engineers follow it. And I do similar things, and I also supply some of these pictures to F1.com. However, there are photographers in the pit lane who are taking pictures for the teams. And you hear all the teams and engineers say, oh, we haven't looked at every other team's cars and we're just concentrating on our own program. That's absolute nonsense. Every single team has got photographers looking at every other car. There's engineers back at the factories making reports on different areas of interesting cars and different bits of other cars and discussing the regulations around them. Is it legal? Yes. Is it not legal? It is legal. Could we use it on our car? Let's have a look in the wind tunnel. And there'll be discussions going on, already started from even yesterday. Even the launch pictures are poured over by each and every team. And they will be studying some of these photos that we take today, and they will be looking at anything publicly available. And one of the teams, and one of the reasons the teams are getting so secretive about certain things they do on the cars, that when they take the floors off the cars, is that they don't want other teams to do that. And that's why we can't see the Red Bull RB19 right now. The Red Bull RB19 currently was being driven by Max Verstappen, but it's undergoing some pretty serious work. Now, we don't know what that work is, but these screens being up in front of the garage, that's only allowed by regulation, even during testing, if the floor has been removed from the car. Remove the floor from the car tends to suggest you're taking the power unit off the chassis or the gearbox off the chassis, so pretty substantial work there going on for Red Bull. And they're not alone in this respect. They've got the screens up, but they're not the only team with a lot of work going on right now. And it seems quite early on day 2 of testing, put the big screens up and to stop work on track and do the work in the garage. Ferrari, they also have been doing a lot of work on their car, and there's a front wing that's been photographed a huge amount by everybody up and down the pit lane so far in this test, because you've got those slot gap separators, which we talked about quite a lot yesterday. There was a big dispute about the legality of them when Mercedes used them, but it's fine now Ferrari are using them. There has been a rule change over the winter, and in my opinion they were always legal in the first place. It was quite clever engineering. So Ferrari just doing a bit of work on the car. It all looks fairly routine. They've got a mechanic bolted in. That's not a new Ferrari young driver, a Ferrari Driver Academy signing. As far as I know, they haven't signed him to the Ferrari Driver Academy. That's one of the mechanics, and quite often you put a mechanic in the car, he might cycle through some of the electronic systems, or he might be just I have seen drivers replaced in junior formulae for this role when they're setting up the car with a sack of potatoes or frozen chips or something like that, just to put the weight in the cockpit so they have the car in the right weight distribution window and they're able to do these things. So the mechanic's just in the car. You can see a cable coming in from the right, so there's clearly a bit of work going on. It might be on the brake system. And there's a little bit of discussion going on with the mechanics here with the laptops out. So maybe not quite as routine as we first think. So a little bit of running backwards and forwards amongst the team here, just poring over their laptops on Charles Leclerc's. Well, it's the only Ferrari they're out to use Charles Leclerc's numbers on at the moment. They'll swap it around if Carlos Sainz wants to have a go. They did that earlier in the day. So they're just making changes to the car. And then, so let's work along a little bit further along the pit lane, because I do want to get down to Mercedes, because there was big work going on that car a few minutes ago. We're just working forward through the Ferrari garage. We talked about the wheel guns yesterday. I'll come around this side, Bob. And this pit lane here at Bahrain is very long. Big gaps between the garages seem even bigger during testing, because each team is only using one car. Now, a lot of teams are building up the second car for the race in the garages at the same time, but they're not allowed to use them at all during the test. If you smash up your car during the test, you won't be allowed to use that. You're not allowed to have a spare car, basically. So now the work on the Mercedes is still ongoing, but it's coming to a conclusion. A little while ago, the hybrid system safety tape, the high voltage tape, was up behind the Mercedes, and everybody had cleared out of the garage. They were doing a legality check on the car as well with the component measuring system that every team is using, and they were doing it on the underside of the car. So I wonder if there was a battery change or certainly a floor change on the car before George Russell was able to get back into the car, which he's now doing. That's a big job. Now, I don't think that's a bit of scheduled work for the Mercedes team, and so they are just having a look at the car, but it looks like it's all bolted back together, and they're certainly bolting George Russell in. I will address at this point a question that comes in all of the time on social media. People are constantly asking us because it's something you see on every single car. You've got to see just above the 63 number on the front of the Mercedes, you see this rectangular section with a semi-circle or the top of the planet sticking out of it. Everyone asks, what is that? Well, that's not a sensor or anything like that. That's the 360-degree camera that all cars are fitted with. So you sometimes see the footage from that used in broadcast. So that's what that little blister pack is. And occasionally you'll see them being swapped in and out for battery changes or whatever it is. So they are operated by FOM for all teams, and that's part of the broadcasting package. And one of the few mandatory camera housings that are located in the car. The other two mandatory camera housings you can see are either side of that Petronas logo on the tip of the nose. Now, you can see there's no openings in them on this because there are no onboard cameras on the front of this car because we're in a test. Now, going to the Grand Prix, there will be onboard cameras located in these pods and on the roll T camera as well. I think that one does have a camera in at the moment. They're the most visible ones. But sometimes you see other cameras dotted about the car, and I'm always interested to see which different angles the team at Formula One come up with. But let's work down the pit lane a little bit more and start speaking French, because Alpine is the next car in the row. Again, it just feels so far between the cars. Come back next week and this will be absolutely bustling with pit equipment. There'll be noses and spare bodywork laying all over it. There'll be just members of staff and people just wandering around. It's just really strange feeling at this point. Middle of a test, sun's beginning to set, everybody's doing sort of long distance runs, learning about what they're doing. Here you can see this will be the floor space for Esteban Ocon in a week or so's time. His car will be sat here, but that car hasn't been built yet, or hasn't been finished yet. They'll be working on it probably in the back of the garage down at Alpine, and that's why these computer monitors are basically all on, well, the Windows screen rather than the screensaver, because this side of the garage isn't fully active. Some of the crew may not even have flown out to Bahrain yet. Some of the crew flew out a week ago. So it's always just a little bit, let's wait and see what's going on. In the meantime, car 10, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, which is getting increasingly pink. The team's going to run two liveries at different points this year. Some will be in blue and pink as you see it, and sometimes to reverse it, have a lot more pink on the car. But you can see here, this is something you don't normally get to see, because Formula One cars are no longer allowed to refuel on the pit lane. They have to do the refueling in a different way, and they can only do it in the garage. And you can see that green drum there. That is a green drum with BP Ultimate Fuel being pumped through the refueling rig, which is by the side of the car. So they're going to put some fuel in this Alpine, and then they're going to be sending it back out. And it all comes from these fuel churns that are travelled around the world. Then other typical work you tend to see teams doing at this point, this is all completely routine, are these little red objects which each team make for each car. And you can see, come around here, Bob, you can just see down there, if you have a look at the screen on that little unit here. So what they're doing here is they're measuring the front wing angle of the car. And that's what these little red things that they're mounting to the front wing are all about. The engineers take a look, they try and get the front wing to be exactly what they want, and you can see the little pocket, there you go. And they'll make these for each individual wing specifications, 3D print them, and I guess paint them bright red. So you can see there, little wing adjustment going on here, and then you'll see the wing angle change as the engineer, the mechanic, is raising that front or the upper flap ever so slightly by the look of it, just try to get the car a little bit more where Pierre Gasly wants it. Or at least the engineers tell Pierre Gasly he wants that a change being made. Spending a lot of time in the garage, McLaren, it's not going well for them as far as I can tell this test. They've spent an awful lot of time with the car sitting in the garage with various bits and pieces missing. The driver's seat's out of the car, in fact, in this case. As you're looking down there, you can see the seat. I'm guessing that will be, well, it's not Fernando Norris, actually. It's Oscar Piastri's seat there. It's just sitting on the floor. I wonder if they're going to change over driver. Piastri's out of the car, but you can see where his bum would be placed normally, down in the seat down there on the side. I'm not sure if the McLaren's fitted with a magic sponsor changing logos, but let's keep on working down there, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. We won't get to the other end of the pit lane, which is I want to do before we start talking to Crofty and the team back in the commentary box, because I want to show everybody as much of the cars as possible, because pre-season testing, it's all about the cars and what's contained on the cameras and things like this. And it's not just the film cameras, it's the still cameras, which we like. And you have to have special permission to use one. You have to get a little sticker on your camera like that to be allowed to use it in the pit lane. I'm lucky enough to have one. So you will see some of these images dotted about in future various places. And Alfa Romeo, they've been quite quiet out on long runs, so we'll skip past them for now. These two boys have been standing out on the pit road basically all afternoon. They must be very hot under those shiny helmets, but we're about to see the green team, Aston Martin, finally come in. Now, Fernando Alonso's done a lot of endurance racing. He's won the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's done the Dakar Rally. He's done the Indy 500 mile sweepstakes in Indianapolis. And now he seems to be trying to achieve the same in pre-season testing in the Aston Martin AMR 23. He is pounding in the laps. Last time I looked at the screen, which was probably an hour ago, he was over 90 laps. I haven't looked at the screen to see what he's on, but he's probably well over 100 by now. Here comes that Aston Martin, and the big talking point on the car amongst many people online. And it's very hard to go, look, big backfire from the car. I hope you heard that, because that was quite spectacular. Is 110 laps for the Aston Martin team so far with Fernando Alonso. He must be tired, but for the oldest driver in Formula One, he's showing no signs of his fitness abating at all. And now if you have a look down here, this is the bit that everybody wants to have a look at, because it just dips down so deeply, and you can see the sculpting shape of the side pods as you get set onto the car. And that shape, to me, looks really reminiscent of the Ferrari of last season. Now, everybody's calling this the Green Bull and saying, oh, it's a Red Bull copy. Nonsense, it's nothing like the Red Bull. You look at that side pod shape, that is straight out of Ferrari's textbook, but it just doesn't have those big cooling louvres. The front suspension is a push rod front suspension. Red Bull's a pull rod. This car is by no means a copy of the Red Bull. There are inspirations on this car from other cars. I see Mercedes inspirations and I see other details on it. But for me, it's looking like a reliable car. Yesterday, it proved to be quite a quick car, although you have to temper that because it is pre-season testing. You quite often see teams not really performing realistically. However, this car is the one to watch for me at the moment. That doesn't mean it's going to be the front of the pack, but I think their performance is going to be greatly improved over where it was in 2022. Now, when Bob's finished having a very nice look at the front end of this very nicely painted car, and it does have green paint on the top of it, but they are reducing that paint. You can see bare carbon fibre down here. Fully painted F1 car, 6 kilograms in weight, just on the paint. So that's why they're stripping it all off. How much have they saved? Not sure, but Aston Martin, I think, made an effort to save 300 grams on the AMR 22 at one point last year by removing paint from just one panel. And I think probably we'll just work our way along a little bit more. I want to get down to Williams, so we're just going to rattle through the last couple of teams, because Williams has really lit up the timing sheets today, and they've shown a car that looks pretty good in performance terms, and I think could be a little bit of a surprise situation. The Haas team have been going quite well. The car's up on the hijacks with work going on the rear, though. That's not really what you want to see. So that, I don't think, is a rear suspension change, and the way the senior management of the team are hovering around the front brakes as well, that's not ideal. But let's work our way along past AlphaTauri. Now, I think the Williams may actually be out on track at the moment, but we'll still finish up down there because there's the other Williams being built in the garage at the moment. And I would like to say that yesterday I was saying Williams were not really performing as we'd expected, and I wanted to see better from them. Well, they did that today, didn't they? The reason that we're expecting a bit more from Williams is that they've got the biggest wind tunnel and CFD testing, and that gives them a little bit of advantage in terms of car development. But let's have a look. Oh, this is quite nice. Let's have a look at the screen there. You can just have a look at the data system that the teams are using. So we can have a look at a bit of the data that the AlphaTauri driver, Nick de Vries, will be looking at. Now, he's not watching his favourite Dutch soap. They've turned it away now, so he's probably just watching us live here on pre-season testing as Nick de Vries gets back in the car. But more wing adjustments going on down at AlphaTauri, and this is all fairly standard fare for pre-season testing. You can just see that wing adjustment strip going in there. They're just measuring off what's going on, and you can see how that block's been shaped to suit this specific front wing. Each individual front wing will need its own specific tooling. But on that point, I think I've shown you enough little details up and down this pit lane. For now, I could go on about this and do it all day long, but I'll hand you over to some other people who can talk all evening long, starting with David Croft.
Sam, we could have listened to you all day long. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, and a great technical detail. And just showing as well why it's so important to have the garages open during testing. Do you remember the days when we used to come to testing and the garage doors were shut and we couldn't see what was going on?
Yeah.
Well, as fans, we do want to see it. Hi, Anthony Davidson and David Croft in the commentary box. Sam Collins, that was mega. Anthony Davidson, where do you want to start with the golden hour of testing on day 2?
Well, let's start with the lights getting lower. The cars are nice and shiny out there. Things looking nice and sparkly.
Yeah. Things at this time of night do look very sparkly. Things change under the lights, don't they?
They can,
Your appearance, for instance, I'm liking it.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you're just wearing it because it's cold.
Yeah, it's a bit cold in here.
Back to the action.
I'm not doing Vegas this year. Feeling a bit left out.
Do you want an invite to Vegas?
I think I'm busy, actually.
I'll get a twin with me.
It's actually quite comfortable.
It's a very comfy jacket, isn't it? I really like it. That is, that's going around the world with me, that is.
I'll give it back at some point, I promise.
The Vegas people are here, and there's a lot of chat about the things they're going to do for the first race in November, the penultimate round of the season. They have got some big plans.
I bet.
I can't say too much at the moment. Sworn to secrecy. But I think it's going to be a race like no other. He said, but I did say what we do want some details about is the track. What's it going to be like? You know, what's the speeds? What's the cornering speed? You know, how fast are the lap times all predicted? That information is coming soon.
Excellent.
Because we are there.
I've got a feeling it's going to be on the higher speed side of street tracks. Yeah, more kind of like Baku length straights, but with maybe Jeddah style cornering. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of just building that picture. That's what I would hope it to be anyway. And
I mean, Formula One
it's going to be a show.
Formula One cars racing down Frank Sinatra Boulevard, which is the official name of the strip. Frank Sinatra Boulevard. You imagine George Russell as he hurtles past the Bellagio with the fountains going off in the background. I mean, I say hurtles. I hope he's hurtling. It's a good word, hurtling.
Well, has he been hurtling today, though, Crofty?
Good point.
He's down there in P12 at the moment. His teammate sits in P14. And I know that Sam was saying that it hasn't really been a great test so far for the likes of McLaren. I haven't seen much speed from this car that we're riding on board with now either, but look, it's still relatively early days. I think in this session now, we're going to see teams focusing on exactly this here in the Ferrari garage and the new tyres on the car, get wheeled out by hand just to help it on its way. Comes Charles Leclerc. But yeah, this is the session where we're going to see a few more lap times, maybe the leaderboard changing at the moment. Verstappen leads Hulkenberg, Sainz, Sargent. Yeah, Charles Leclerc himself is in P5.
Conditions are good for some faster lap times as well. The wind is not as strong as it was last night.
No, and a slightly different direction as well. I did find my favourite windsock, or wind cone as it's also called, on the way here up to the commentary box. And a bit of a different direction, like you say. Not the breeze is less gusty than it was this time yesterday. So, and there's more rubber on the track. So it will be a faster circuit right now than it was this time yesterday.
1:31.6. Max Verstappen has completed 18 laps, as you can see, is the fastest time of the day from Nico Hulkenberg with 1:32.4. Hulkenberg taking over from his teammate Kevin Magnussen, who did the morning session after completing 67 laps. Verstappen taken over from Sergio Perez, who did 76 laps. Here then comes George Russell down to turn 1, little bit of a headwind into turn 1, which helps your stopping distance. And then it's all about getting a really nice smooth exit out of turn 2 and into 3 to carry all the way towards the hairpin.
Yeah, he's on more of a race run here. No DRS, and I could just see the rear lights flashing away as the car's in harvest mode on the way towards the apex of 4. Now towards turn 6. You have to be patient in that corner to open up turn 7, and that's where you want to be applying more throttle through turn 7. And now into turn 8. one of the tightest corners on the track before you go up and over this brow of the hill. You see just that's a great shot. So you see the car come towards you, a little bump for good measure before you just swing it round and slow it down and turn at the same time and tighten the apex into turn 10. You're looking really for steady braking and good rotation in the car to help pivot the car and get it in a straight line for the exit. Into 11, a faster corner is a medium speed corner taken in 4th gear. You see the speed on your right-hand side of your screen, climbing. As you go through the elevation of turn 12, slow it down again for turn 13. That's more of a medium speed corner taken in 3rd gear, and then up through the gears once more. 7th or 8th gear, depending on which kind of harvest mode you're running, what engine power you have in the car. Usually it'll be hanging on to 7th gear before that final couple of corners, 14, 15, takes you back onto the main straight. You want to avoid the curb on the exit, especially when you're still cornering in turn 15. It can drag the car out of line, as we saw with Fernando Alonso this time yesterday.
The rear grip seems to be Mercedes' issue, and that's what we've been seeing in terms of struggles for this day and maybe a bit of yesterday as well.
But look at the rear end of the floor there, so much higher than it was last year at any point.
Yeah.
And that's why we're seeing better ride quality from the car.
But is that affecting the rear grip as well?
I think it's probably more that the car was just out of the window in terms of its balance earlier. They're not alone in this. I saw lots of other cars. I saw the Aston Martin that we've been kind of raving about all week so far. That was struggling as well on the long run through turn 11, as Leclerc's just been. And I think the Williams as well, struggling with the rear end and traction. So they're not alone in that respect. It's just that we've spoken to Toto Wolff, he mentioned it, and then suddenly it becomes a big headline because it's Mercedes, it's a big team. But I'm seeing other teams definitely having the same issues. But you can work on that. You can take away a bit of mechanical grip from the front end of the car. You can take a bit of aerodynamic grip away from the front of the car by just taking away a bit of front wing. There's lots you can do to the car to help it out and save the rear tyres. And it's all just a learning process.
Right, Anthony Davidson, take your microphone off. I've got a present for you. We might need to get you in vision for this. But my good friends from the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix have just brought in, come on in, everybody. I've just brought in a little present just for you. That is your very own Vegas jacket. I'm going to put my jacket back on because it would be wrong to keep the sparkles all for myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see sartorial elegance in its finest, this is the smallest jacket we can find for you as well, which might be just a little bit big.
I don't mind.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that.
I'm in your club now, Crofty.
Hey.
I've been imitating you all week.
You've done the commentary.
And it's another step closer.
To what?
To being you, mate.
I love you. Yeah, that's your jacket. Isn't it great?
Thank you so much.
Jocelyn has come over with your present for today.
It's like Christmas has come round again. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much.
Can I talk about all the exciting things
My kids will be jealous.
you're doing in Vegas, or am I still sworn to secrecy? If we could just hold it for a second. Oh. I'm bursting with excitement about what's going to be happening, to be honest. There's going to be a race as well at some stage, and the race is going to be epic. But yeah, we'll bring you all the flavour, the full flavour of the Vegas Medicine Cabinet, ladies and gentlemen, is coming your way. But I did mention that people up and down the paddock have been trying on their Vegas jackets today. They've been receiving them, and one man did do like the full Elvis. That man was Gunther Steiner. He is with Laura Winter now.
Excellent.
Laura.
Not quite with me yet, and I'm still waiting to find my Vegas jacket as well, Crofty. I'm yet to find it. But here, with the grand entrance, I am now going to welcome, we need some sort of music or something, Mr. Gunther Steiner.
Look at that, baby. Vegas, baby.
Wow. Vegas, baby, indeed. Crofty is delighted. What do you make of the jacket?
No, what I make of the jacket of Crofty, I was told Crofty can wear it, so I said, how did he wear it? How did he get into it?
With style. How did I get into it?
No, with Crofty always, you know, because he gave me a hard time yesterday, so I have to give him something back, you know. So, Crofty, this is for you, you know, I wear it nicely.
I will leave that between you two boys to work out off there. That's fine. Oh, we've got a... Okay, there we are. He's getting warm.
Yeah.
All about the sponsors. Get the sponsors out. Gunther, hi. It's brilliant to see you. Here we are for the 2023 season. How are you feeling ahead of this one? And the cars both look decent out there. They look reliable. They're up the timing sheets as well.
Yeah, it's difficult to say where we are. I mean, the most important thing is being reliable. Oh, fingers crossed, we've got one more day to go tomorrow, but today was flawless, so very good. Obviously, we try different things. Everybody's trying different things. So where we stuck up, we don't know really. Will be very tight this year, in my opinion. You know, tighter than ever, but which is good for the sport. Hopefully, we can get out on top of it. But up to now, also with Nico fitting in very well. So far, so good.
When I spoke to Kevin earlier, he seemed very keen to start to put some pressure down, to start to lean into it and get some of the performance running out of the car. I bet you guys are itching to see what it's capable of.
Absolutely, you know, you always do as much as you say, we test just to get the reliability right and to find out what changes in the setup of the car do. In the end, you want the speed, but I think the speed we will find, or I think in general the speed of all the cars we will just find out next week on Saturday, because because as I said, it's so tight. I think 5 kilos or 10 kilos of fuel difference will be the difference between P8 and P20.
As resplendent as you look and as great as it is to hear from you, I've heard there is a red flag. George Russell has stopped out on track. So Gunther for now, au revoir, and Crofty, back to you.
Laura, apologies, Laura, that we had to cut Gunther short there. But there is the sight of George Russell stood by the side of the track after his Mercedes car ground to a halt amidst all the jollity today. There's a serious test going on, and this is a seriously bad time for any team to have issues on the track and to lose track time because, well, conditions that much better for more representative night race running than they were during the heat of the day. The track temperature has obviously come down a little bit too, to 24 degrees.
Let's have a listen. Yeah, so there's a message that popped up on his dash, and I'm pretty sure it said something about the hydraulics. It would make sense that he's stuck in 4th gear as well. As soon as he was told on the radio, obviously, yeah, because the hydraulics controls all of the gear shift mechanism as well in the car, along with the power steering, and yeah, look, he's fighting with the steering as well. I think we're looking at a hydraulic issue there. So now he's going to, yeah, because he's still in 4th. So yeah, he had no clutch. That's also controlled by hydraulics. So I'd say hydraulic issue there on Mercedes.
Hour and 34 to go in the session. Hydraulic issue. That's going to be a struggle to get fixed.
And it's got, sorry, it's got the green light on the top of the car as well, so not a hybrid issue.